Flower.
Why would you go after this guy?
There's a reason why.
He's like a hippie.
Why would you go after this guy?
Little weekend, yeah.
Come on.
Why would you go after this guy?
There's a reason why.
Why would you go after this guy?
He's like,
Hey man, want a flower?
Why would you go after this guy?
There's a reason why.
he's like a hippie.
Why would you go after this guy?
Little weekend, yeah.
Come on.
Why would you go after this guy?
There's a reason why.
Why would you go after this guy?
He's like,
Hey man, want a flower?
Why would you go after this guy?
There's a reason why.
he's like a hippie.
Why would you go after this guy?
Little weekend, yeah.
Come on.
Why would you go after this guy?
There's a reason why.
Why would you go after this guy?
He's like,
Hey man, want a flower?
Why would you go after this guy?
There's a reason why.
he's like a hippie.
Why would you go after this guy?
All right. We are live. Welcome back to Reasoned Answers, your home for the
crackhead clown individuals.
Got a nice early stream today, starting earlier than normal. I have a meeting this afternoon, so we wanted to try to get this stream in. So if this is a better time for you, it's your lucky day. If it's a worse time for you, or you're watching on a replay because it was a bad time, well, you can't win them all. Last week, we looked at the first part, specifically the opening statements of the debate between Raymond Ibrahim and Jay Smith on the question of whether Muhammad, the purported prophet, was a historical figure or whether he is a myth. Those are the possibilities. I know that Jay Smith didn't want to defend any position whatsoever in his opening statement. He just kind of wanted to say, I don't have any obligation to prove anything. He is, however, wrong. From a historical inquiry position, the default position is, in fact, not that someone did not exist and someone else is obligated to prove it beyond all possible doubt, and so that you can just sit there and play skeptic. If we were to adopt that standard for history in general, we would have no history. So, that said, we're now going to look at the rebuttals, and in the rebuttals, Jay Smith does start to make some arguments. In his opening statement, he did not make any substantial amount of argument. I'm just saying this objectively, right? He flat out said it's not his responsibility to prove his case.
Well,
which
he
is
also
odd.
said, hang on, he also said he's
yeah.
not ready to defend it. He's done this for 30 years and he can't defend his main thesis. That's interesting.
It is.
Then why would you accept a debate on it?
Well, not only accept, challenge, actually.
He challenged. He made the debate. He gave the topic. The topic belonged to Jay Smith. He made the debate. He made the challenge. And then he goes, oh, I'm being dragged into this. You made the challenge. And he has enormous numbers of slides and teachings that he has been saying publicly to millions of people at this point. And he is not ready to have any of these actually face the scrutiny of someone who knows what they're talking about in a public setting. That is the message I got from this.
It was very
challenged you for a
strange.
debate. I challenged you to a debate
sure.
in a moment of passion, but I don't want to expose any of my arguments to scrutiny.
Mm-hmm.
And if I am wrong, again, I am willing to debate Jay Smith on whether or not the Quran is from the 7th century, which he says he is totally ready to debate, and it's very easy to do. So he ought to be able to soundly defeat me and shut me up forever. Oh, Jay Smith does have evidence it's not from the 7th century. Not even proof, just decent evidence, a decent reason to believe. And I will drop that point.
Yep. I mean, Jay now likes to say there's 3 pillars, the book, the man, and the place. But in reality, Islam is the book and the man, which is what Jay used to say, said for decades. He recently, about 5 years ago, changed it to book, man, and place. Mecca is definitely, I mean, I'm not saying it's insignificant or worthless or whatever, but it's definitely on a lower level than the Quran and Muhammad in the importance of Islam. And thus, these are very important questions to Muslims. And by consequence, they should be very important questions to us who are interested in ministering to Muslims. Who was Muhammad? maybe he was a myth, right? Maybe he's just a creation, a story, a Harry Potter, right? That's made up at a later time, as Jay Smith's theory is. I know he didn't defend that in the debate, but that is in fact his theory, that he is, I mean, not exactly like Harry Potter. I mean, Harry Potter is intentional fiction. No one is treating it like history, but for lack of a better term, a conspiracy to invent this figure of the past is Jay Smith's theory. On the other hand, maybe he is a true prophet, right? Maybe he is in fact what Muslims claim. And unfortunately, the no-mo crowd seems to set that as the dynamic. Those are the only possibilities. There's, of course, another possibility, the one that is the historical reality, in my opinion, that Muhammad was a historical person who started the religion of Islam, but was a false prophet and an evil individual. That is an acceptable position for a Christian to hold. You guys who keep telling me I'm not a real Christian, that I'm a fake, that I'm essentially a Muslim because I believe Muhammad existed, you are setting up a false dichotomy that Muslims can win. That is what you're doing. You're setting up a false dichotomy where if Muhammad is not a myth, then Islam is true. That is not an appropriate dichotomy to set up. And it's one that Muslims would love you to set up for them because it is so much easier for them to win than the actual dichotomy, which is whether Muhammad was a true prophet or a false prophet. Welcome to the show, Mary and your brother in Christ. Eric, you have decided to dive into this. You haven't been a part of this little mess that Mary and I have gotten ourselves into, where we now have all these people coming after us. Why did you decide to come on today?
Well, you invited me, so there's that. I have an interesting sort of middle ground here. I would definitely say that I am a fan of Ibrahim's work. His books are fantastic. Definitely Defenders of the West was a fantastic dive into the Crusades. Even Jay Smith also agrees with me on that, as he was very clear in the debate on that. And I'm also, I include Jay Smith as a friend of mine. So I'm kind of in the middle ground here between the two. My opinion is that it's a useless, Jay Smith's argument is useless. Because if I'm going to try to argue with a Muslim on the street, it's absolutely useless, because I would have to prove two things. Well, I'd have to prove that Muhammad doesn't exist, which is already an uphill battle, because they believe that he does exist and that he's a true prophet. I'd have to prove that he is a fake prophet and he doesn't exist. So I'd rather just stick to one side. It's much easier to just prove he's a fake prophet. Did he exist? I think that there's not enough evidence to say that he didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's enough to say
and
that
I'm glad
he did.
I'm glad you're here today, right? You can provide a more neutral, I mean, of course, no person is completely neutral, but a more neutral perspective on the debate than Mary and I, who, unfortunately, and this was not our intention. Right? This was never our intention, but we unfortunately are now in direct conflict with Jay Smith and his collaborators, his researchers. For whatever reason, Jay Smith has decided that he's not really doing any research himself anymore. He's just repeating what other people are saying. He's trusting them to be correct, and they are not correct. Right? 5 years ago, I didn't have any, I didn't agree with him, but I didn't have any massive problems with Jay Smith's positions. His positions have gotten far more radical in recent years, far more intellectually unsustainable, and frankly, far more dangerous to the Christian church, because a lot of his theories are now hinging on ideas that are contrary to the Christian standard narrative. Right? The idea that Christian orthodoxy was established by Jesus and carried by the apostles. And yes, heresies pop up, but that there has been orthodoxy all along, and orthodoxy has shut down heresies. Instead, his ideas center around this atheistic, secular, there is no true Christianity idea, that there is open conflict at the time of Muhammad, and no one really knows whether Jesus was actually divine or not, so that you have one group of Christians fighting another group of Christians, these are Jay's words, over whether Jesus is a true figure, and then that gets distorted to become Muhammad later on.
Yep, and whether or not Jesus
terrible.
died and rose again, whether or not Jesus is divine. He also misrepresents Christian history. He claims that Arians did not believe that Jesus was divine, and that is total nonsense. They believe that Jesus could be divine, even though there was a time when Jesus was not. Somehow he is a special type of creation that is so similar in substance to the Father that he is also divine. That's what the Arians believe. They were wrong. You can't believe that. That's goofy. It's just messed up. But that's what the Arians believed. And he misrepresents that to make them this proto-Muslim movement, and then attaches the Muslims to them, which is blasphemous and insane, honestly. I actually believe that common uneducated person who went to an Arian church could have a saving faith. That would be possible. What I don't believe is that an educated, and again, it gets more dangerous the more that you try to say things about God, because you may say false things about God. At that point, when you're saying false things about God, then you can't be saved. But the person in the street could still be a Christian. And because they did recognize Jesus as divine, they did recognize him as an actor in creation. They did recognize him as coming in the flesh, divinity and humanity combining together, that he did rise, die and rise again, and he did defeat death and all of these things.
Absolutely.
So
Garibaldi here puts it well. Great strategy from Nomos. Recognize basic historical reality, and then you are basically a Muslim. And to be truly anti-Muslim, you have to accept that Islam is the result of the most elaborate conspiracy theory ever. I know people won't like it be saying a conspiracy theory, but it is literally a theory about a conspiracy to create a myth, a mythical Muhammad. Understand that is your theory. You might not like being called a conspiracy theory, whatever. It is a theory about a conspiracy to create a myth of Muhammad.
And J. Smith places this conspiracy in the courts of the caliphs. He explicitly does. The conspiracy occurred in Damascus under the Umayyads and later under the Abbasids. Period. He has located it. I want to be very clear that he has a very clear theory here. And we were buffering online or on the channel for just a second, so that may have been why my mic was funky, because we were buffering for a second while I was talking.
Everything looks healthy from my end. Lately, we've been having some issues every once in a while from YouTube's, and as near as I can tell. So, lowest ranking Muslim, and I'm a Muslim. I don't want any of your crap about your theories about Christianity today. You're welcome to stay and participate in the question of whether Muhammad existed, or you're welcome to contact me, set up another discussion in the case of lowest ranking Muslim, or a first discussion in the case of I am a Muslim. My email is in the video description. I am not going to go off topic and address your stupid polemics, okay? We've seen your stupid polemics a million times. You're not going to persuade anyone. You're wasting your time. And if you insist on continuing, you will be placed in timeout. You want to get your polemics out there? I will give you time on the channel for that. Today, we're asking the question whether Muhammad existed. And you should be happy. You should be happy that we're asking this question. This is a question you can actually win, unlike your usual, and like everything else we talk about. Let's put it that way.
And we're all on his side as far as Muhammad existing. There's someone named Muhammad who started Islam.
For rather different reasons, because it is extraordinarily clear. And one of the reasons I really dislike the Nomo approach is because they make excuses for how stupid the Quran is. Because the Quran cannot be as stupid as it is if it came from a literate people. So they completely ignore the ridiculous things that it says, that it is saying that the proof of Muhammad is going to be a physical feature that Jews and Christians recognize when they lay eyes on him, which is described elsewhere as his mole. They throw that out. They ignore it. They ignore it. Secondly, they also ignore the fact that what Muhammad was running around saying is that he was giving the exact same scripture in Arabic for Arabic speakers. They are called ayah because each one is a miracle, because it is exactly the same as in the Injil and the Torah. And Muhammad thought that the Injil was the entirety of the Christian scripture, which included everything that was in the Torah, and the Torah included basically everything that was in the Injil, including future things. That's why we're supposed to recognize the prophet, because like everything he does is supposed to be in there, because it's all the same book. It's already been written.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just missed completely, utterly by the nomos. They ignore it because it can't be true in their paradigm. So they aren't talking about the claims of Islam itself, and instead are running to other things, and that's the problem.
So, Lois
That
Ranky
is-
Muslim, happy to educate you. Polemic is an argument against something.
And
So
I know
we
he's
rank it
lying about that because he was on Act 17 polemics last night.
Act
is
17 polemics.
spamming
I've never
and
heard the
then-
word polemics.
He was on a polemics channel last night, Act 17 polemics, and he was boasting on there about how if he got put in timeout, he'd be coming back tomorrow. And I'm sitting there reading that, and I'm like, there's a 24-hour timeout, and you have been spamming, so don't tempt me too much. Okay?
Oh man. All right, I'm gonna take this because it's on topic from Lowest Ranking Muslim. The fact that they had to move Prophet own grave site is proof enough for his existence. Why move a grave of someone that never existed? I mean, come on, you got to think here, buddy. We're on your side that Muhammad existed, but this is not a good claim.
Yeah,
right?
it's
This
not
could
a
be
good claim.
the grave could be empty, or they could be any random bones from any random person.
Aside from which, Muhammad is supposed to be like completely whole in his grave with no rot whatsoever. They didn't find a grave like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are 1,000 better arguments you can make, bud.
Good news here from the Giant Tree. I saw the debate review y'all did last week on the topic, and man, it really opened my eyes. I was in the Mythic Momo camp, but then actually hearing and seeing it being debated as well as y'all's comments really helped. Glad to hear that. One other thing before we get started, I'm going to say this again. I've said this many times. I like Jay Smith. I think that he has a great heart for evangelism, a great heart for Jesus. I think he's amazing as a Christian and as a human being. He is very wrong on these arguments. We are opposing the arguments. At times, comments might sound like they are opposing Jay, and that's because he is the representation of these arguments. I'm going to do my best to analyze the debate fairly. I am, before like people jump on and be like, why are you debating Jay or whatever, right? One, Jay has declined to have a debate or interact with me in public in any way. Two, I am in private communication with him, trying to send him corrections to things that he's saying that are blatantly false. It's too early to say whether he'll take those corrections or not. I'm happy to believe he will take them until proven otherwise. However, he also made this a public teaching. It needs to be corrected on the public record. All right. This isn't a matter of sin. This isn't a matter that should be kept private. This is public teaching. It needs to be confronted publicly. Jay is aware I'm doing this. He did not tell me he has a problem with me doing it. If he has a problem, he kept it to himself. So as far as I know, he has no problem with us doing these rebuttals, these responses, or in this case, just analyzing the debate as neutrally as we can. So all those who want to be offended on his behalf, maybe take his example and not be so offended. That is all I want to say on that. We will continue this interaction as much as is necessary, because I feel it's a very important thing, and Jay is wrong on this issue. That doesn't mean he's a bad person. That doesn't mean he's a monster. That doesn't mean he's not a Christian. All you want to say, I'm not a Christian, fine, whatever. That's your prerogative. But as far as I'm concerned, this is an issue on which Christians can legitimately agree. It has nothing to do with Christian doctrine. It is not a fundamental important issue, right? Christians can't disagree about the divinity of Christ, but they can disagree about the existence of Muhammad. Just want to make my position absolutely clear. Any more thoughts before we jump into the debate?
I'm good.
Nope.
All right. Let me get my screen shared here. We're going to start with the first rebuttal by Raymond. Raymond went first in the debate, so he'll have the first rebuttal. And I got it where Hatun said you'll have 10 minutes. There might be, 5-10 seconds before he actually starts talking. But we're right about where it begins.
Well, you are ready. Let me unmute you, sir, first. Sorry.
Yeah, just be sure to give me a 1 minute because the way I see it, both for me and Jay, it's different than what it really is. I guess because of this lag that's going on.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, I will give you 1 minute warning.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, your time starts.
Okay. Thank you, Jay. You've said.
Let me just take one comment from Bruce real quick. You were enjoying that live stream. I am definitely not enjoying this, unfortunately. I enjoy making fun of Muhammad. I enjoy criticizing Islam. I enjoy leading Muslims to Christ. I do not enjoy having to speak against Jay on these topics. It is not something I want to do. It is not something that financially benefits me either. I have lost subscribers because of this. I have lost revenue, in other words, because of this. And that's okay. I'm not complaining. I'm just making it clear that I'm not doing this to make a name or for financial interest or whatever other thing you have in your mind. I'm doing this because I believe that Jay is wrong and that it is important he is corrected. That is my only motivation, and I don't find it fun.
A whole lot of things, and unfortunately, I'm trying to take notes, and because I may forget, and at some point, if I forget to answer something, by all means, if Hatun wants to raise it, or if you do later, please do so. Okay, the burden of proof. You make this argument that I have to prove it, or Muslims have to prove it, and technically speaking, you're right. Those who have something that exists, the burden of proof is on them. But in this case, I don't think it really matters. I don't think it's applicable. Muslims don't feel compelled or the need to prove anything to you or me. Okay.
Okay. First of all, I don't think Raymond should have conceded that. I think that this is a stupid thing to do, to say, well, I don't have any burden of proof because I'm not saying anything existed. You are taking a position. You're not just saying I have no idea. You're taking a positive position that Muhammad didn't exist and that there was actually a conspiracy to create this myth. You have just as much burden to provide evidence. And in fact, more, since the default, to the extent that it ever makes sense for there to be a greater burden of proof. It's not really epistemologically valid to begin with, but to the extent that it ever exists, Jay's claim is far more unusual,
Yes,
far more extraordinary than Raymond's claim that a person existed. A person existed is not an extraordinary claim by any means.
That someone created an entire conspiracy and fabricated thousands of pieces of information that somehow magically all point in the same direction. This is not a kind of fabrication that has even been done in modern times. It's completely impossible in ancient times. Guys, when people are fabricating things, they weren't even trying to use the correct handwriting to fabricate something new. They weren't trying to get historical details or geography correct. They weren't trying to do anything that would go into a modern forgery. They just weren't. That's not how people worked back then. The fact that the Islamic sources say that the Muslims pooped outside or the Meccans pooped outside. It wasn't just the Muslims. The Meccans pooped outside until Muhammad had a big enough group that the poop was being extremely noxious in Medina, because the native Medinans all use latrines. But Muhammad was terrified of the latrine demons. Then Muhammad came up with spells that you can cast to keep you from getting hurt by the latrine demons. This would not occur to someone fabricating Muhammad. Why? Because he's placed in a city, and the idea that anyone from the north would imagine that there were towns anywhere, villages anywhere, where people pooped outdoors and not in latrines would not even occur to them. They would not even think of it. So that's just the kinds of detail that are in the sources. You know, the fact that the early Islamic history is aware of events in Yemen and has no idea what's going on in Persia or Rome. It doesn't even know where the emperor is. Like, literally, the Islamic sources think the emperor is in Basra, in Syria. They don't know where the Roman Empire is. And they don't figure it out for the longest time either. Like, no one fabricates those kinds of errors. It just does not happen in the ancient or medieval world ever. And Jay's here like, oh yeah, they made it all up at these courts. No.
Yeah, real quick here, if just paying attention to really what happened there again, Raymond is saying yes, Muhammad existed. Jay's saying no, Muhammad didn't exist. The burden of proof in that statement is actually, like we're pointing out, on Jay. Because, for example, if I were to apply this to any other person in history, let's say Ragnar Lothbrok, he was a Viking. If I were to say, you know what, Ragnar Lothbrok never existed, it was just fabricated after the fact, it never existed. That's a statement that I need to back up, because the common accepted knowledge is that, from a historical standpoint, is that Ragnar existed. He's definitely blown up. He's not really, he's from fables, but there, according to history, was Ragnar Lothbrok of some regard. If I said he never existed at all, that means the burden of proof is actually on me to bring forth. And the fact that Jay didn't, in his opening, actually bring anything forth, in fact, tried to argue that he didn't have to do anything because he's just arguing that it doesn't exist. Sorry, Jay, that's not good enough. It really isn't.
So Tyler Sweet said, if anything, these streams are a love for Jay. We want him to live in and speak truth always. Absolutely. Right. We're doing these in the interest of correction. Carol B says Jay's position comes from many scholars on the topic in Islam history or the validity of historical claims. That's it. He followed what he found, maybe too obsessively. So I will. So hold on.
Go ahead.
It is correct that he is not doing the research himself, that he's following what people are saying. The problem is, well, among other things, the problem is most of these people he is relying on are not scholars. They're just lay people making random guesses. And they're constantly changing their views. They're constantly changing their theories, which is fine as long as you're, it's your personal speculation. You're exploring things. It's different when Jay teaches it as fact, right? And that's the issue. Jay teaches these things as fact. They're not scholars for the most part. And even if they were, that doesn't make them correct. That 99.9% of scholars are on the opposite side as Jay. What did you want to add?
And to point out a few things, the few scholars that he relies on, many of them have changed their views and completely backed away from them. He also misunderstands what a lot of them are saying and attributes to them things that they have never said and never believed and never claimed. Mark Drury has never said that the language of the Quran is Aramaic, and Mark Drury has been proven abundantly wrong about his claims about the Arabic of the North. Abundantly wrong. And Jay doesn't care. He teaches that it's Aramaic anyway, attributes these claims to Drury and to Al-Jalad, who explicitly says that the language is Hijazi. He says, no, Jalad's on my side. No, he isn't. No, he isn't. Patricia Crona does not say that, has not done the things he says she's done or said the things he says that she's done. She has no interest in the maps of Ptolemy. because she believes that it can be dismissed out of hand that Mecca is on those maps. And it's one map. It's one map. And Jay keeps saying it's a 7th century map or redacted to the 7th century. No, it isn't. That comes from Jay. He just created that in his mind. He got confused. Yep. He made it in his mind. And then now he's still teaching it after being corrected that no, it's Ptolemy 2nd century. It's one map. And he's still teaching false things out of his determination to stick to the narrative it created when he was confused. He is mistaken about the coins. That comes from Oleg. That does come from a person who hid half the coins and distorted and lied about what the coins were. And he's following someone who has lied. There's no way he doesn't know the truth. Oleg is a liar. And he's just repeating what he says because he has a professor position. So I'll just repeat it. It's just a lie. Oleg has lied about the Ugaritic, and he repeats it and then adds more fabrications on top of that. The issue is that he checks nothing. He goes with a few very, very fringe scholars. Then he adds more things that are untrue on top of what they are saying. And it is a massive problem. And these scholars are anti-Christian scholars. Oleg is an anti-Christian. Shoemaker is an anti-Christian. They're using Islam to try to attack Christianity. And he is repeating, sometimes almost verbatim, their claims about the lack of orthodoxy, smearing Trinitarianism as a Byzantine Christianity. Just shocking, shocking stuff. And I think it hasn't occurred to them what the meaning of the words that are coming out of his mouth, because when he has his blinders on, it's attractive.
All right, we're going to try to actually stick to the debate after I take this comment from Positive Vibes. It's a grift for them to bash Christians with different theories. I don't buy into everything Lloyd DeYoung says, but I don't spend weeks to bash him. They are demons.
How much money do I make from this? You pathetic loser.
Okay. Mary doesn't get a cent. She only loses income that by not working and appearing on my channel. She does not get a cent from this channel. She also is anonymous. Mary is not her name. She doesn't show her face. So she couldn't be doing it for fame either. I already said before you were here, but I already said that I literally lose money by doing these streams. And I lose fans as well. People unsubscribe from the channel for me doing these streams, and I don't get any substantial amount of money. I get substantially less money than when I talk about Islam. So if this is a grift, it is the dumbest grift in the history of the world. It is a grift that hurts me, okay, financially. And Mary never gets any financial benefit from the channel, period. So you can think whatever you want, right? You can come up with whatever excuse to ignore what we're saying that you want in your mind. That is your choice. I can't prevent you from doing that. However, your theory about us is as coherent as Jay's theory about the origins of Islam. That is to say, completely and totally incoherent and lacking in evidence. I'm sorry. It is the truth.
And let's be clear. Who does make money from this? I'm not bashing Mel for having a Patreon. He has a Patreon. He makes money from this. He has made money from this from years. This has been his only shtick. If he gives this up, he loses everything.
Yep.
Mel has made this into an international speaking tour where he gets paid to go to various places. Or Jay, excuse me. He's being paid to go to various places around the world to teach this. This is now his main source of income. This theory, not Islamic polemics in general, this particular theory.
It is.
If you want to say that someone is financially invested in it or invested for fame and reputation, it's not us. I am not making that claim, but you are making the claim that there's financial, dark fame incentives. But guess who is actually benefiting in those ways from this? Jay Smith and Mel. Not me. Certainly not Thaddeus, who, this is now his income. He is losing money.
I am dependent on YouTube to eat. Well, I mean, that's not entirely true because I have savings, right? Which is the only reason I can eat because I don't get enough from YouTube to eat. But I am dependent on YouTube for the income that I have. And I am still doing this, which reduces my income. But you say I'm grifting all you want. And again, I agree with Mary, not accusing Jay of grifting. I believe that he actually thinks he is doing something beneficial and positive. I don't believe that he's a grifter, but he is the only person who is substantially benefiting from this topic financially. That is a fact. I am hurt by it financially. Mary gets nothing out of it. Raymond probably, I don't know for sure, but probably lost subscribers over this little conflict, and therefore income. Certainly he didn't. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know for a fact one way
Raymond's
or
main
another.
thing, he's barely started as a YouTuber. His main
Right.
thing is his books, and he
Right.
found it a distraction and annoyance. The only reason that he posted anything is because of the horrific behavior of Jay Smith's
Of
fans
people
on his
like
page.
positive vibes.
Yeah, going,
to be
why
blunt.
are you even saying this? Muhammad didn't exist. That's what you need to teach. You need to teach that Muhammad didn't exist. And he's just pointed out that this position is absurd.
I mean, it's comments like this, right? It's comments like this from positive vibes that make us, well, it's not the only reason, to be clear. I explained my reasons multiple times, but it's one of the reasons we feel we need to speak about this, because Jay's audience, not because he told him to, I'm not accusing him of doing anything, but Jay's audience is very enthusiastic about attacking anyone who merely speaks against his ideas. Yeah, so to be clear, I don't know for sure if it had any financial benefit for Raymond. I mean, the debate did get him some attention. It is possible he could benefit, but I'm quite sure that is not his motive. All right, let's put it that way. I'm quite sure it's not his motive.
He found it massively annoying and thought it was ridiculous that he even has to talk about it. That's what he thought. He doesn't want to talk about it. He wants to do other things. And yeah.
Oh yeah. He definitely doesn't want to talk about it. Right. I know that for a fact. He doesn't want to talk about it, and probably won't be talking about it anymore going forward. Like he feels he spoke his piece, and now he's just going to move on and do his thing. Jai and Daughter of Christ, same idea. They are not benefiting from this financially. They probably lost subscribers. They certainly took a ton of hatred because they corrected Jay on some points as well. So whatever, you justify it in your mind, however you need to justify it in your mind. Just know that it is in fact only in your mind. I am not benefiting from this financially, let alone grifting.
Well, I mean, even the concept they're putting forth is in itself sort of anti-Christian, because we're supposed to sharpen each other. We're supposed to keep each other accountable. If you see someone using bad arguments or using arguments that are counterproductive in the way that they are double-edged swords, and they're trying to prove that Islam is wrong, but at the same time they're destroying Christianity as well in ways that they wouldn't accept, our responsibility as brothers and sisters in Christ is to confront them about it. And if it's something done in public, it needs to be confronted in public. It can't be behind closed doors.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's get to the debate here. And we're going to try to restrict our future comments to the debate themselves. I think we've made it quite clear our position about Jay and this issue and whatnot. And if you want to attack me, and I will turn off the notification. Forgot to do that before we started.
Again. Shame.
All right, it's off now.
They've given us the dawah. They've called us to Islam. A guy like me says, yeah, I believe your prophet exists, but I think he was a false prophet. And they shrug their arms and go, okay, kafir. A guy like you says, yeah, I believe he didn't even exist at all. They shrug their shoulders, kafir. Same thing. So technically, I don't think there's any burden of proof on them, because I think there's a bit of conflation going on when you talk about these things. And we are forgetting that there's the faith element, especially from the Muslim side. They approach this through the lens of faith, which is why so many of these arguments just fall on deaf ears, as I'm sure you've experienced with Muslims. Okay, so that's to the burden of proof. And when you mentioned again, and you mentioned that the standard Islamic narrative, SIN, that's a good acronym, by the way. But you mentioned how it's so much later. Okay, but I mean, we still know things like Al-Muwatta. We have fragments of it, and it talks about Muhammad, and it's old. Okay, and so it's not really as bad. And again,
so that point will go over many people's heads. They'll have no idea what Raymond was talking about there. What is he talking about, Mary?
About sorry, I zoned out for a second. What was the very last thing you said?
Jay, he's countering Jay's point that the standards Islamic sources are very late, saying that we have earlier fragments.
Well, we have 7th century fragments of hadith collections. We have 7th century fragments of several things. Jay Smith wants to pretend that everything would be written on parchment and therefore would survive. That's nonsense. Most things were still written on papyrus once they got papyrus in the region. They mostly had palm leaf books before, but and none of those survive. Those don't survive as well as papyrus does. But the fact is that various things that were written down in the 7th century have been taken by multiple other authors in the 8th century and things that survive as well. The Ahadith collections begin being developed as a collection, as organized groups for publication in the 8th century, but they existed in writing before then. And the compilations were just that. They were compilations. You would go to different places and get them compiled together, all the ones that you believed were authentic, right? You might discount some of them. And the purpose of all Ahadith collections, its main point was because the Quran is a pathetic, defective book that doesn't tell you how to be a Muslim. You need to know the Sunnah of Muhammad, all the things he did, all the things he said, all of his rulings, to be able to live like a Muslim and to be a jurist, to be a scholar who determines, what to do in this situation, how to clean, how to pray, how to adjudicate contracts, how to take witnesses, how to solemnize marriages, how to do all these things, how to deal with inheritances. You need way more than just the Quran. You need the Sunnah to be Muslim from the beginning. And they used Sunnah from the beginning. So Muhammad's companions, they were the first generation who lived with him, walked with him, heard him. And so they just told people, well, this is what he did. This is what he said. This is what he did. This is what he said. The second generation were the ones who began writing this down. They only wrote it down for their own use. They did not publish it abroad, partly because that meant that, guess what? If you're the only one who knows, if you studied with everybody, where does everybody have to come to get information? They have to come to you. They can't go to other places. They can't get anywhere else. It's you. You are the authority. Your status is improved because you're the one who went to all this effort to get all this knowledge to be able to adjudicate in this way. It's all you. But secondly, there was another reason that they didn't make books in that second generation for publication. And that was that Muhammad said that the genre of book is either scripture, the book of Allah, or it is a fabrication. Muhammad didn't have knowledge. He had knowledge of written poems, written contracts, all kinds of things that could be written that weren't book. But to Muhammad, book was from God or else was forgery against God. It was that simple. And I had this suspicion, and then I found out, and it was recorded by later scholars who didn't quite understand what was going on, but they're like, these people didn't want to create a book because it would be a rival of the Quran. I'm like, what do they mean? That people go to that instead of the Quran for rulings? And I was like, oh my goodness, no. If it is a book, then it is the same genre as Quran And now it's possibly a forgery against Allah in the minds of the second generation. So the second generation was known for writing things down and would order their own writings. And then they had their own students. Their own students wrote down from their writings. Although they spoke them orally at the time, they wouldn't let them read them. They would speak them orally. And on their deathbeds, they were known to demand the burning of all of their texts, second generation. Third generation produced books because of pressure from the caliphate, who was like, this is not a sustainable system. You can't run an empire like this. This is not, we need to have everybody reading from the same page. And literally, guys, all of you, write this stuff down and produce it for other people to have so we can have agreement on this. And what is very interesting is that this did not happen just at the courts. Some people were in Medina, some people were in Yemen, some people were in other places. And they didn't send their books to get approved of by the caliphate. They wrote their own sources down in an organized format to be copied by others. And those are the early things that began to be circulating, was from that generation.
Positive vibes playing off the little notification there. Ka-ching, no grifting going on here. Move along. Yeah, you know, I get a notification that I sold a book on eBay, and it makes a cash register sound that has absolutely nothing to do with anything on this stream. But, you know, it is what it is. All right.
How dare you make any money at all?
I
You
know.
can't sell your old books. Shame on you.
I want to replay that section just really quick here.
This through the lens of faith, which is why so many of these arguments just fall on deaf ears, as I'm sure you've experienced with Muslims. Okay, so that's to the burden of proof. And when you mentioned again, and you mentioned that the standard Islamic narrative, sin. That's a good acronym, by the way. But you mentioned how that's so much later, okay? But I mean, we still know things like Al-Muwatta. We have fragments of it, and it talks about Muhammad, and it's old, okay? And so it's not really as bad. And again, and you mentioned the New Testament.
Okay, so that's what I thought. I wasn't sure what he said, but he said Muwatta, which is an early hadith collection that most people have probably never heard of. But I just want to make this point clear here. This is unfortunate, right? For a polemical purpose, this is unfortunate. I learned this early on when I was doing this, and I stopped saying that Sahih Bukhari is the only hadith collection that Muslims have, that it's the first one or whatever, that there's nothing before it, and it just comes out of nowhere. Because early on, a Muslim confronted me on this. I think maybe even before I had a channel. I don't remember for sure. But in the comments, it was definitely in the comment section. I don't remember if it's comments on my video or just when I was talking to people in comments before I had a channel. And I did research, and I'm like, yep, he's right. There's lots of non-authoritative, non-used, but still existent hadith collections from before the time of Bukhari.
Now, the ahadith within these collections, just to be clear,
right,
the ahadith within these collections show up in the later, more complete ones.
Yeah, I mean, not every single one, but
yeah,
a lot of them do, right?
But and some of them, every single one is just reproduced for a few of them. But so notice this one,
right? So this is the one that Raymond is referring to. These are the
and
most
it's
important.
Not the earliest.
And it's actually not the earliest, but and then so look, just look at this list, right? From the 1st century after the Hijra, so not even after the death of Muhammad, we have at least 12, because this is the date the person who collected it died, so it has to be before that date. We have at least 12 different people who collected hadith. Some of these are available in fragments, some are available in quotes and other texts. Some of them are known only by name. I'm not saying that all of these are like, you can just go and look at them as it says here, right? They're not readily accessible, but they existed, right? It doesn't make any sense to say these didn't existed when later Muslims are talking about them, analyzing their contents and whatnot, right? Some of them we have, some of them we haven't, at least 1 or 2 of these, I believe we do have completely. Like this one I'm pretty sure we have completely.
Yeah, that's the
Safiya Anas ibn
Muwatta.
Malik, generally
Yeah.
considered the first complete collection that we have. I think, if I remember correctly.
Well,
don't
we
quote me on
have
it.
we have one other that's even earlier that's preserved in its whole inside another collection, but not as a self-standing book. But the point is,
But anyway,
that,
the point
go
is, right? Hadith was being collected before the time of Bukhari. He didn't just create it out of nothing.
right. And his is considered the most authoritative because he went around to all of these folks and then to the people who still had it in the non-book form and looked at their material too and decided which ones to include and which ones not to. And a lot of times he didn't include them because they were duplicates. And an important point is that J. Smith doesn't even know what the Muwatta Malik is. He doesn't know what it is. He's like, it's a book of law. In fact, it's like Roman law. Would you go to Sunnah.com and click on that book, which again, we have in its whole, and let's see whether or not J. Smith knows what this book is. So go right over here to it and click on, say, prayer or cleaning or something like that. Purity. How about purity?
I already clicked on one.
Oh, prayer and congregation. You make it larger. It's super fuzzy for us.
Yeah. Sorry. It was exceptionally tiny.
Yes. There we go. So is this hadith or is this a Roman law book as J. Smith says it is? Has J. Smith ever looked at this book?
I don't know.
He's teaching you about this book, but he has not looked at this book. This is
I don't know if he's really teaching you about it. I mean, he's basically ignoring it for the most part. But
no, he says it, and he says it in other streams. He says,
he says it occasionally, right? He knows it exists.
But he says it is not a book of a hadith. He says that explicitly. It is not a book of a hadith. It is only a book of laws, and it's like the Roman laws. And so, I forget who he claims says this. I don't believe they say this because it's ridiculous. Says that it comes from Roman law. Yahya related to me from Malik, from Nafi, from Abdullah ibn Umar that the Messenger of Allah said, prayer and congregation is better than the prayer of a man by himself in 27 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
Does that seem like a Roman book of law to anybody here?
Nope.
Does it sound like someone who has looked at this would make a statement like that?
No.
So again, if you are
definitely not someone who's familiar with Roman law.
If you're a teacher, you ought to check things before you teach them. Prayer,
Shortening a prayer,
tajahud, eclipse prayer,
fear prayer,
asking for rain. Yes.
Now, let's say how we should ask for rain. That's a good one. It's unfortunately the long one, but here's what the saying is: the messenger of Allah, may Allah bless him and grant him peace, came out of the place of prayer and asked for rain. And then when he faced the Qibla, he turned his cloak inside out.
There we go.
Malik asked, how many rakas were there when the prayer of asking for rain? And he said 2 rakas. And the Imam does the prayer before he gives the khutbah. He prays 2 rakas and then he gives a khutbah and then he does dua facing the Qibla and turning his cloak inside out. He recites out loud both rakas. And when he turns his cloak inside out, he puts what is in his right on his left and what is on his left on his right. And all the people turn their cloaks inside out when the Imam does so and face the Qibla sitting. Yeah, this definitely sounds like a law, not some magical spell to get rain.
This is definitely has nothing to do with paganism or
witchcraft. No, not pagan at all. Not a little bit pagan. Oh, wait, no, completely and utterly pagan.
The rain dance.
Are you guys turning your clothes inside out when you pray for rain? I'm a Muslim. If you have ever prayed for rain, do you face a Qibla and do you turn your clothes inside out? Because otherwise, shame on you. You're not doing it right. No wonder the rain doesn't come. You don't do the magic right.
To be clear, I had no idea what we were going to read there, but it was hilarious. All right, let's continue with the debate.
We have a lot of manuscripts and they're very close to the events, etc., which I agree. But you still haven't mentioned the Old Testament. Christians believe in the Old Testament. Jews believe in the Old Testament. The actual accusations or the criticisms that you are raising about lateness apply much more to the Old Testament than these hadith and these seerah. I've already mentioned that the fragments of the Dead Sea are 1,000 years after the time they were supposedly written by Moses. So if we were to go by your logic, then of course the whole Old Testament is gone. We have to just discard it, as I've heard you say about the standard Islamic narrative based on its age. So again, let's not compare apples with oranges. If you want to talk about oldness and biblical scripture, we should talk about the Old Testament vis-a-vis the standard Islamic narrative. You also, you were talking about oral traditions, and I think people don't really appreciate the power of oral tradition because of who we are nowadays.
So Raymond's point, people have misunderstood this or intentionally misrepresented it, whatever, isn't that the Old Testament is unreliable, that we shouldn't believe in the Old Testament. His point is that you have to be consistent. If you're going to tell a Muslim, right, that they shouldn't believe in Islam because their sources are too late, and then tell them they should believe in Christianity, they're just going to be like, even if they believed you, the second they learned when not just the Old Testament, but the New Testament sources, complete documents come from, they would laugh in your face. And unfortunately, this is actually playing right into the hands of Muslim polemics, right? That they're saying that the New Testament is corrupted. The Old Testament is corrupted. You can't believe them because the manuscripts are way too late. And then Jay is saying the Quran manuscripts are way too late. You can't believe them, except they're much closer to the time of Muhammad than the biblical manuscripts are the time to Jesus or Moses. And for reason, right? For good reason, because the New Testament is older, 7 centuries older than the Quran. The Torah is 1,700 plus years. Let's just say 2,000 to be round, 2,000 years older than the Quran. Of course, there's a longer gap, but there is a longer gap. So if you're going to say the gap is too long for the Quran, as an argument for Muslims to convert to Christianity, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Nope.
A guy like me, I remember as a child, until this day, I remember my home number, my phone number, and I remember my address when I was like 6 years old because my parents put it in my head. I can't forget it. But now I forget my own phone number. I have to actually look it up because it's been saved. And I think all of us have, to a certain degree, have become so, our memory's gone. We don't really use it. But these older cultures, especially the Arabs, who did everything in rhyme and verse, oral tradition was a real thing. And not just the Arabs, the Irish, the Vikings, the Greeks, the Iliad, all that. Again, the arguments you're using
here,
they are not.
I do want to put some pushback against this because Shoemaker actually showed that the belief in the reliability of memory before writing, when a literate culture goes in and writes down what they said one time, then comes in 10, or 20 years later and writes it down again, it's very different. If it is like a memorized story that wasn't their own experience and they're just like a poem that they're doing kind of thing. These performative things are not static. And Shoemaker has actually shown accidentally that the Quran was always written. That's why Muhammad had scribes back in Mecca. I originally thought that he only had scribes in Medina. That's not true. He had scribes very early in Mecca, like by 3 years after his, or at least by 5 years after his supposed revelation. And suddenly, magically, he starts getting a whole lot more revelation when he has a when he has an actual scribe to write it down for him. And it's funny how that works, that when you have a scribe to write things for you, you suddenly have a lot more to say. Interesting. So what Muhammad was actually doing was having scribes write down what he said, then taking aside, why was he having them write it? It was for heavily his own use so that he could practice it and memorize it and recite it well. But sometimes he forgot and he messed up anyway, said different things. And then people wrote down different things because he didn't remember his own recitation, because he would never read it from the paper. He would always recite it. He portrayed it as this miraculous oral thing when it wasn't, when he was messing things up. With the ahadith, they were written down in the second generation. That's something that, like, all of this so-and-so said from so-and-so who said from so-and-so, it gets distorted because they have this myth of wonderful recitation, when in reality, yeah, it's written. It's written from the second generation. The types of variants are typical that show up are early, like the different versions of the same story that differ in more than just like the conjunction you use or the preposition you use that have bigger wording variants. Those variants get set really early, and most of the variants are actually scribal variants from later on, and it's quite remarkable. Joshua Little has actually done his work, trying to debunk these things. When I went, wait a second, scribal variants, and then I looked at other sources. It's like scribal variants here, scribal variants there, scribal variant. It's not oral. This is an Islamic myth. It is written.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Islam's not the only one that is weak against it. That's everything. All of history is like that. So once again, it just seems that you're raising the bar very, very high for Islam, whereas everything else can get a pass. And then that way Islam looks like the weak one. Okay. I don't know, you haven't mentioned it, but I do want to mention it because it's really important. The Muhammad name. So, I mentioned the 7th century attestations of Muhammad, and some of them use the name, of course. Dr. Yaqubi doesn't.
So just real quick on the point of consistency there, this is the same game that atheist Jesus mythers play, right? They establish one standard for Christianity, a different standard for everything else, or they're just willing to throw all of history under the bus, perhaps if they're being consistent. But that is the only way you can get rid of Jesus, and it is also the only way you can get rid of Muhammad is to throw all of history under the bus. At least pre-printing press history, and probably, pre-mass communication history as well.
But CBOS does, John of Damascus does, his Theodore Abu Qura does. And what I've heard you talk about, okay, so there's a Muhammad without the vowels, which is because it was a nascent language, and that's true. It's very hard. I used to work at the Library of Congress. I was called in to try to decipher Kufic Quran script, which is essentially the same thing, and it is very hard to read. I get it. There's no diacritics, there's no nothing, but that's again a reflection of a nascent language coming into being. Okay, so but it's not. I don't think this. And the other thing people need to understand, I've heard the argument that Mahmud, MHMD, means the praised one. Well, it does absolutely. Okay, but guess what? Every single Arabic name means something laudatory. Okay, we know Ahmed, which is kind of a cognitive. It also means praised one. Kareem, the generous one. Abdullah, the servant or slave of God. Every single Arabic name means something laudatory that you could, if you look hard enough, maybe find some reference somewhere to Christ with that name. So it's not as compelled. This isn't some kind of strange coincidence that Muhammad's name just so happens to mean the praised one. Every name has a meaning in Arabic like that. But in the case of what we're talking about, which is the Christian sources, primarily Greek, they're actually exactly what they write is Muhammad. So John of Damascus, he writes Mohammed. Well, yeah, because he's writing in Greek, and there's no H in Greek. So he can't write Muhammad. It becomes Mohammed. And we know that's Muhammad because then Abu Qura uses Muhammad in Greek, and then he uses the Arabic Muhammad, just the way it's written. Okay, so this is the name of Muhammad. And
pause here. So this is an important point. A person who writes both Greek and Arabic writes Mahmed, and no, it's Mahmed, M-A-M-E-D, Mohammed right after it. So for him, it is clearly the same name. But Jay Smith wants to make, oh no, it could be this, it could be that, it could be someone else, it could be someone else entirely. We have no idea what this is. He also, one of his, my brain just fell out of my head. What was the point he was making right before that about?
His first point. So actually, good. Let me just summarize what Raymond is doing here. So 2 arguments that Jay likes to make. He didn't necessarily make them in the debate, but Raymond has to rebut something, so he's rebutting arguments that Jay often makes. 2 arguments he often makes is that Muhammad is a title, not a name, because it means praised one. Mary would dispute whether it means praised one, but that's
there we go.
And hold on, Mary, let me finish.
Yeah.
And then the other point is that the manuscripts have different spellings of Muhammad's name, therefore it's probably different people. Those are the 2 points.
Yeah, the first one, that every name has a meaning. Yeah, when he said that, I went, oh yeah, a lot of people are tricked by this. Muhammad means the praised one. It's super special. To say that, oh, for that reason, it can't be a name. You know, it's a title. It's clearly a title. Yeah. Every Arabic word, every Arabic name is a word. Usually, like you said, a laudatory one. Sometimes it's things like al-abas, which is the frowner. And they pretend that all the negative ones mean lion. Whenever you hear, there are 50 words in Arabic for lion, what they mean is there are 50 negative names and we pretend they're all referring to lions. But the fact is that every Arabic name has a meaning. The difference between Muhammad
every
and
name,
Muhammad,
period, basically has a
And
meaning.
Yeah, it's not something unique to
Well-
Arabic. This is something
well,
that's
it's hidden in
universal.
English, right? Unless you
Yeah,
have
yeah.
the
So in
Hidden in
race.
English,
yes.
right? In English, people often just pick a name. In the modern world, people often just pick a name because they like the way it sounds. But that's not how people pick names in ancient times. In any culture that I'm aware of, it always had a meaning behind it. In every culture.
Well, even in English, even though it's behind,
Yeah.
not really out in the open, you can still look it up online. Every name has a meaning of some sort. It's just back then it was more critical. That meant something more than just, well, we use it today in English. But that being said, yeah, it's common.
Yeah.
Not unique.
And furthermore, the difference between Mohammed and Mohammed is a very, very, very tiny difference. If you want to say, well, he wouldn't be called the many praised one. Instead, he'd be called the one who gives many praises. The difference is minuscule. And actually, all of these could mean the one who gives many praises in writing. And Muhammad could have changed it for himself between the typical form like mutalib rather than mutalab, the one who makes many studies rather than one who has studied a lot, which would be really odd. But anyway, the one who seeks, like the seeking one, it might have been the praising one. And then in his lifetime, Muhammad himself changed the id to an ad, which is a teeny tiny difference in pronunciation. And from then on, everyone read it as ad.
So I'm a Muslim, wants to debate on whether the New Testament, which is preserved, well, the answer is both, but he wants to debate on which is preserved, the New Testament or Holy Quran. Go ahead and email me. That is at reasonedanswers.com, and we can have that discussion.
Yeah, huge amounts of the Quran were thrown out by Muhammad, according to all the sources. Muhammad himself threw them in the toilet. They were gone, flushed, done. Allah has them in his book, but they're
yeah. We can get it. We can get all that in a debate, right? We can have that discussion, right? If you just mean like by a normal standard of preservation, then the answer is both. If you mean letter for letter, dot for dot, then neither. But you're not going to get a standard where the New Testament is worse than the Quran. But I'm happy to have the discussion with you. And the reason why is because, as Mary was saying, large portions of the Quran have been lost according to Islamic sources. Maybe those stories are made up. I don't know. They're very strange stories to make up. I will say that much. Now, I have a question for Eric. Oh, yep, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask, I'm a Muslim, one question. Are they Quran only? Or do they accept the Hadith? Because that would really change perspective.
And by the way, if you want to go apples to oranges here, you should say the Gospels, because the Quran is approximately the same length as the 4 Gospels, not the same length as the entire New Testament. I'm sure that you'd accept that amendation to your little request. Or if you want to go on scripture entirely, then we can go all the Bible versus Quran plus Hadith. Right? Those are your options for a fair comparison, I would say. But to Eric's point, the Hadith are actually essential to your religion. And you can't have your religion, unless you're a Quranist and not a Muslim, you can't have your religion without the Hadith. Now, my question for you, Eric, what is the word, because I'm not going to say name, what does the word Yeshua mean?
Yeshua means God with us, if memory serves.
God saves. God saves.
God saves.
So Jesus didn't exist, right? Because
There's a
Yeshua
meaning to the word.
has a meaning. It's a title, right? It's a title. God saves. That's the logic,
Wow.
isn't it?
I'm pretty sure Mary doesn't exist because Mary has a meaning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One that her enemies will be happy about. Because it means something negative. I can't remember off the top of my head. Bitterness. Mary means bitterness. So
Hey, since it means that, sorry, Mary, you don't exist by this logic.
to be clear, Miriam in Hebrew means bitterness, which is where the name Mary comes from. So some of the chat are going to see her name fits.
Not where I was going with it, but okay.
Yeah,
Well, also-
specifically Yahweh saves, right? For
Yahweh saves. That's
Yeshua or Yehoshua, right? Longer version, which is what in English is Jesus. So Jesus doesn't exist, according to this logic.
So your Thaddeus, just for a second, Thaddeus, your name has Aramaic and Greek origin, with the meanings being heart, courageous heart, and praise. Which, if Muhammad doesn't exist because his name could possibly mean praised one, your name just means praise. Yeah. Therefore, there's no reason to think Thaddeus even exists, and reasons and answers must just be an AI.
Yep, it's true. Yeah, I mean, my name actually the meaning is somewhat uncertain, but that is one of the suggestions. It depends on if you think it's a Greek original or an Aramaic original name, and there's a dispute over that as to what the exact meaning would be. But either way, there's a meaning behind that, right?
And just the reason why we're pointing this out is because this is one of the main arguments Jay is using. And if it is so easy for us just to sit here and disprove it, it definitely shouldn't be something you're using as one of your core arguments.
Yep. And by the way, although he goes by Jay, his name is Joseph, which means God shall add or God will take away. Name's not 100% certain, but that sure sounds like a title to me. So, and Joseph Smith, you can see why he doesn't go by Joseph, but that is actually his name. Jay doesn't exist as well. Just to be clear, he doesn't exist. So I don't even know why we're analyzing his arguments. All right, let's continue.
In transliteration, all right? Translation, of course, is if you take a word and explain what it means. So, okay, I'll give you an example. In Arabic, kalb means dog. I just translated it into English. I said kalb means dog. Now, if I were to transliterate it, I would take the word kalb and spell it K-A-L-B, which would be unintelligible to English speakers, but I've tried to spell it and approximate the way it sounds, okay? So the name of Muhammad till this day, do you know how many ways it's being written? It used to be M-A-H-O-M-E-T, okay? And then there's two M's, and then there's ones that start with an O and end with an E, or end with an A. So that is not something to get, tripped up on at all, and we have it till this very day. I still write Quran, K-O-R-A-N, but of course you should do it Q-U-R'-A-N. So, when you look at these early 7th century Greek and possibly Latin, of course the transliteration can be anything, and that doesn't really tell us anything at all. It's still legit. It's Muhammad, because we know it by the way he's being described, which again falls in line very much with the Islamic narrative. And then a lot of the things that you say, Jay, it's you talk about, okay, Mecca, and you kind of create and presuppose criteria, and you make it sound like it's essential, but it's kind of your own doing. So, the Mecca thing, I don't get tripped up on that. It could be any number of things. I believe the map that you rely on seems to be Ptolemy's map, or iterations of it. And so it could be that, well, it was made before Mecca even really came into being. It could be that he's wrong. Maps can be wrong. They didn't have Google Map back then. They didn't have Wikipedia. They didn't have the internet. People need to understand the horrible conditions that these people are working under, which is why everything is fragmented.
Even now, Google Maps is not perfect. And we've got so much technology backing it, including satellite imagery. It still gets things wrong. How on earth are we expected to know perfectly the world back then using their maps? Sorry, that's a stupid criteria.
And Jay likes to say, it's not on any of these maps. It's not on a 1st century map, a 2nd century map, a 3rd century map. You know how many so-called maps existed in that entire time period that are relevant to the discussion? 1. And it's not even technically speaking a map. It's a list of coordinates in the work of Ptolemy or Ptolemy, as
Jay Colson. Yeah. Ptolemy,
And
has been
guys.
said. It's
And
Ptolemy.
we're talking
The
about
P is silent.
some backwater town, not talking about like Rome here. We're talking middle of nowhere sort of town. So yeah, it wouldn't be surprising if you're going to miss anything on a map.
Mm-hmm.
The middle of nowhere is a good place to have a mistake on a map.
Mm-hmm. And cargo crew here with a common misperception. I thought Quran says Mecca was a major trade hub and big city. In fact, the Quran does not say that. Nor the Hadith. This is a later addition to Islam.
And hang on, it's not even something that standard Muslims believed until like the 20th century because they got confused, because the Quran is very specific that people began to be allowed to trade in Mecca, in the sacred city, to help replace the money that they were losing from
wait, Mary, if they began to trade, does that mean it was a major trade capital before they began?
Exactly. They could not have been. There was no trade allowed inside the sacred precinct, which is all of Mecca, the region of Mecca, which was delineated by like markers that were way outside the village. You could not have trade fairs in that area. You couldn't have businesses as such in that area. To have that, you had to go outside of it. The important market that they controlled is called Ukaz, and Ukaz is in the sources as the market north of Taif. Guess where it was? It was on the trade route. They controlled the market of Ukaz, so they projected their power from within Mecca to this farther away market, which they controlled because of their religious influence. They controlled this market, and that's where they did all their trading. There was no trade that was permitted in Mecca according to the Islamic sources. So all these people saying, oh, it's a trade city, oh, it's this rich trade city, like they haven't read the sources. It just is baffling to me how careless people are. And it really started with Montgomery Watt in the 1950s, who just had this idea that was really appealing to him. Tons of people have adopted it since then. They just don't have the material.
Mm-hmm. So cargo crew thinks he pushed back. He says, or maybe that wasn't intended as Anyway, the Quran refers to Mecca as al-Qura in Surahs Al-Imran and Ash Surah, meaning mother of all settlements. Now, does mother of all settlements mean... So he obviously wasn't saying that was just me assuming by only reading the first word that it is a large trade capital.
No. What it means is it's the mother, the first physical settlement where people settled down. Now, the Quran does also not teach that Adam and Eve were thrown down at Mecca. It does not teach that. Neither do the Hadith. They claim that they were thrown down far to the east. They usually identify India and walked to Mecca, where they built a tiny knee-high house and circled around it and lived there just as their family. Then Noah's flood came and the people who lived there had turned it into a pagan site. At the time of Noah's flood, it was entirely washed away, obliterated, destroyed, was not inhabited again. According to Muhammad, was not inhabited, had no stone, no nothing, until Abraham brought Ishmael all the way down there for no explicable reason and rebuilt the Kaaba and put in the stone. Now, according to Muhammad, at that time, Allah had turned the Zamzam well into a temporary spring, which lasted for a little while. And so Ishmael settled beside the spring that was beautiful, and there were trees and it was wonderful. And then the spring dried up because Hagar did the magic wrong. So it didn't continue flowing. And so now it's just a sad little well instead of a beautiful spring. And then they abandoned settlement there and went elsewhere until the time of Qusay were the first people who physically settled there. Other people controlled the space. According to Muhammad, it was nothing but a shrine that was uninhabited, and no one lived there until Qusay in the 5th century AD finally told the people that they could cut down things to build structures there, to make room for their houses, because it was a pagan sacred site where the cutting of anything and the damaging of anything, except for, you could let your animals, when you came, you didn't have to like keep your animals. I mean, you could let your animals graze there, but for anything else, you weren't allowed to cut it. And he's like, no, you can cut it. You can to make houses, and that's fine. And the people were too scared to do it, but then he did it with his own hands, and he wasn't struck down, so they did it too. Now, if you're talking about a reasonable historical view, I would say that the Minions, who are known to have set up pagan shrines in the various places that they traveled, because they actually were travelers from Yemen. They traveled to the north. They traveled all the way into Egypt. They traveled out to Crete. They were extensive travelers on the trade route. They controlled the trade route at that time. They set up their own little shrine there as one of the places that they went to after the second trade route was established along the shoreline, which was not the earliest trade route. And the second trade route and passes between them. Yeah, mother means the beginning. It's not the mother of all settlements. It just means the first one, the first place people settled.
Mhm.
You can
Yeah.
make up whatever
First
you
of all,
like.
you're right.
Put
First
up.
of all, right. It's mother of settlements, not mother of all settlements. Second of all, yeah, it's strong language, but it's not strong language that supports it being a large trade
No.
capital.
It only supports it being the first, the original,
So,
from which
cargo
all the
crew.
others came.
Let me just draw an analogy here. Okay. The Garden of Eden in the biblical narrative, or in the Quranic, or at least the Islamic narrative, is the mother of the human race. Does that mean that the Garden of Eden must be a large, grand city that we can find on maps today?
No.
No. And additionally, neither of those verses actually say Mecca. You're just assuming that it's talking about Mecca. It just says the mother of settlements. You're granting that the Islamic claim about what the Quran means is correct in order to say the Muslim claim about the Quran is false, or the Muslim claim in the Quran is false. So two things. One, you're granting that this is Mecca when it's not in the text. And two, being the mother of something doesn't mean it's a grand, large city that must be on maps. And again, one map. And there's an argument, which I think is incorrect, but nonetheless, there is an argument that it is on Ptolemy's list of cities. So this is just silly in every possible way. No, the Garden of Eden is definitely on Earth. In Christianity, at least. In Islam, it's somewhat ambiguous. But...
kind of. It's actually ambiguous in Christianity too, by the way.
Okay, fair enough.
When Jesus says, "Today you will be with me in paradise," that is the word for Eden as well.
Fair enough. Anyway, point being, it's generally assumed to be on Earth because it's described between the four rivers. So, which refers to the Tigris and Euphrates and two minor rivers. Anyway, point being the mother of something doesn't mean something is grand. It doesn't mean it's large. Right? Jesus is the mother. I know it sounds weird, but Jesus is the mother of Christianity. Does that mean that Jesus is like some grandiose, large human being?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just silly, okay? To say mother means it must be a large city.
Is why everything seems wrong and contradictory. But historians, what they do is they try to piece it together, understanding that's the name of the game, not use it as an excuse to say, it's a polemic now. Now that guy doesn't exist, which is sort of what's happening. And I'm okay with that as long as it's a polemic against Islam. And I hope to get to that point because I think this is the most important point, which is this is a very audience-specific doctrine. And it's kind of gone off the rails. So I'll get to that too. Yeah. So a lot of when you talk about Mecca, or you talk about some years are off, or I've even seen the argument, oh, that can't be Muhammad because it's pronounced there's a D, not a T. I mean, come on. Historians know much about this. We know this is how it is with transliterations that go back centuries for every historical character, and the way their name is written and the way they're presented. Or I've heard, well, whoa, they call them the Taye, not the Arabs, or they call them the Saracens, or they never call them Muslim. Well, again, this is nothing to get tripped up on at all. Up until the Crusader era, they wouldn't call them Muslims, but we do know that Christian theologians talked about Islam and talked about him, but they called them the Saracens because this is how people actually spoke. If you were a Christian, everyone's
So another point that Jay likes to make is that the word Muslim doesn't appear in text, except it does appear in one text, which Jay arbitrarily decides is a late forgery because it has the word Muslim, and we know that the word Muslim didn't exist at the time. But in general, they don't call them Muslims, right? They call them Saracens or whatever, which is perfectly normal. That outsiders don't use you by your preferred term, or maybe the Muslims didn't even call themselves Muslims at this time. The evidence suggests they probably called themselves the believers originally. So what? It doesn't mean they don't exist because the term is different. Christians were not originally called Christians. Our preferred internal term for ourselves was followers of the way.
Yep.
Outsiders started calling us Christians. We eventually adopted the term. Had we not adopted the term, then someone like Jay would be like, look, the Christians are the way, the followers of the way didn't exist back then. There's only this word about Christians. There's nothing about the way. It's just silly. You guys want to add? All right.
infidel, and you don't really care about learning the inner workings of their doctrines. So you would call them their national designation, Saracens, Hagaris, Ishmaelites, whatever was the name at the time. Muslims still, this is the very day, do it. The radical Muslims, they call Christians Nasara, okay, because that's the Quranic name. And because apparently, I don't know if it's the etymology goes to Nazareth or whatever the case mean, but they know that Christians in Arabic are called Messihin, from the Semitic Messiah, Christians, but they intentionally call them Nasara. Does that mean Christians don't exist? So I'm just trying to, remember a lot of these arguments that I've heard and try to give them some meaning. But I think hopefully I've answered a lot of what you brought up. And if I didn't, I'll be happy to in the other round. I see 23 seconds. I don't know how much time I really have. Is it 23?
Yeah.
Okay. And yeah, so that's it. Again, I can't get over the fact that every argument that you can make about maps, about coins, if you dig down deep enough, you can do it about almost every historical character from that era.
Your
Positive Vibe says we're lying through our teeth. I think he means in Mary in the chat specifically, but provide evidence. Provide evidence, Positive Vibes. I know that's not something Jay's a fan of, but you can provide evidence.
I mean,
because
Raymond
again, the Arians agreed that Jesus was Lord and was involved in
Arius
creation.
affirmed the Apostles' Creed.
Yeah, he affirmed.
I want to make that clear.
Creed.
He affirmed the Apostles' Creed,
and the Arians all prayed to Jesus and thought that salvation was only through Jesus. They had some really dumb, ideas. They worshipped a created being. They did, instead of worshiping the worshiping the original creator. But
the Nicene Creed was created to clarify, because the Apostles' Creed is short, and Arius could legitimately point to it and say, "I believe in that." So the Nicene Creed was created to clarify Orthodox Christian doctrine that had always existed and wasn't necessary to clarify up until that point, because no one was saying, "I can affirm the words of the Apostles' Creed without actually affirming the meaning of what the words meant."
So they said that he was not the same substance as the Father. So he wasn't identical to the Father, whom they regarded as the ultimate God, but that he was of a similar substance in a way that nothing else was. So they did not make God into the same as the rest of creation, but some sort of similar substance, which makes no sense. Like, honestly, it's not a coherent view. It's ridiculous. It doesn't hold up to scrutiny. They wanted to counter Sabellianism, and they created something that was potentially worse than that. But they prayed to Christ, worshipped him, believed he was incarnate, and died and rose again. All of these things they affirmed. What they said was that he could be homoousios, or homoousios. It's a funny word. Instead of homoousios, a similar substance. And they thought that would rule out Sabellianism and make everything else fine, which is, you can't. They prayed to Christ, to be clear.
Right.
So, and
They
then
believe
later
that
on,
Jesus was fully divine, but they
Mhm.
believe that he was created, right? That he's the created Son of God, probably created. There's some dispute, but probably created before the rest of creation, right? He's the first thing created. He's fully divine. He has the similar essence, right? Because he's created to be that way. They did not deny the deity of Christ. They did not deny his incarnation. They did not deny the resurrection. Just today that they are basically Muslims or proto-Muslims or something along those lines is to totally distort history.
yeah,
It
and
just
they
is.
denied the same substance with the Father. They did deny
Right.
that. So it
Right.
depends on, but they wanted
But the
to
Apostles'
define
Creed
things in
doesn't
this
say same substance,
goofy
right?
way. Right.
It
But-
just doesn't, right? It just says, I believe in the Father, and I believe in the Son, and I believe in the Holy Spirit.
But what happened was, what happened over time is that because of the pushback from Trinitarians going like, your position is ridiculous, then they went more toward in the direction of bitheism, essentially, and got rid of the Holy Spirit entirely. And then that was so obviously false that they collapsed under rhetorical pressure. That's what happened. So, no, you are correct. They did not believe that the Son was equal to the Father. And yes, they did reject that the Father was of the same substance as the Son. That's neither here nor there. The reason that John of Damascus says that they talked to an Arian is because the idea of Christianity in the Quran, that the Quran does what? Attacks, is more like Arianism than it is like anything else. It's not even quite Arianism because, Allah thinks that the Son comes into
Allah
being with Mary.
Allah attacks something that doesn't exist. I
Right.
mean,
Allah,
that's just
but the reason John of Damascus went to Arianism is because it's the closest thing to
But what
a
does
heresy
John
that
of
could have been-
Damascus actually say? Does he say that Muhammad was an Arian?
No, it says that he once talked to an Arian priest and then got weird ideas about Christianity from that and then made up his own religion.
Specifically, just for clarity, for word, he talked to an Arian monk and then created a heresy of his own creation, a new heresy that did not already exist. That's the claim of John of Damascus.
Right. So saying that they had anything to do with Arians is ridiculous. What John of Damascus sees is some similarities between Arianism and perhaps a confused view of Arianism and what Islam attacks and thinks is regular Christianity, or at least the Christianity of the people who worship Jesus, because there are other Christians that supposedly don't. Like, he was confused. And that's where he thought he must have gotten, because the Islamic sources already said he talked to a priest, and it was like, wow, if he has this confused idea of Christianity when he attacks it, the only priest he could have talked to would be an Arian. That's what he's saying.
So I'm a Muslim. You need to get on topic.
Yep.
Sam as well, right? Sam as well. You need to get on topic. We're not discussing creation today, but to answer your question, of course, it's possible that vegetation is created before the sun, although I would say that is not what the Bible says. But obviously, it is possible to create vegetation before the sun exists. No, that's not what the Bible says. All right. So we got through Raymond's first rebuttal there. It was a tough task. It was a tough task because he didn't really have anything to rebut. So he brought up a bunch of arguments that Jay typically makes and did a pretty good job explaining why these arguments don't work very well. Now we go to Jay. He finally gets his chance to sign. He finally gets his chance to rebut Raymond's position and not have to make his own case. Let's see what he says.
Time is up. Thank you very much, sir. That was the first rebuttal from Raymond Ibrahim, and then Jay Smith will respond to that with his 10 minutes. Those of you who are joining us on Raymond Ibrahim's YouTube channel, please tag DCCI Ministries and then tell us who you are asking your question so I can ask them at the end. Jay Smith, your 10 minutes will start whenever you are ready.
Okay, I'm ready. Right. So let's go through, and this is where I'm going to start getting the rebuttals in. So you're talking about the 7th century attestations, many attestations, and you say it's not important where these are. If you notice, every one of these attestations, look and see where they're placed. In every case, they're placed. The person who is speaking either has it in Gaza or Jerusalem or Damascus or in Kufa, which used to be Hira, or up in what is today Tikrit, up in northern Iraq. So they're all in places like Israel, or Gaza, which is in Palestine, or up in Syria, or in Iraq. Isn't that interesting? Not one of these people placed this character, if you want to call him Muhammad or Muhammad. Don't place him where he should be, in Mecca. Nowhere in Mecca, way up in the north. Now, what's interesting, you went on, you did talk about, well, whether we call him Muhammad or Muhammad. Now, remember, what is Muhammad? Muhammad is a very well-known word. It actually is a title. It's been around since the 1400s.
All right, so his first rebuttal was, you said it doesn't matter where the sources are written. Of course, it does matter. Well, okay.
Yep.
That's just an assertion, right? That's not actually a rebuttal.
And let's be clear, nobody says that, none of these sources say that Muhammad was originally from this area. His Correct. Followers are showing up in these areas. So Jay just misrepresents all the sources to support his theory. He's blatantly misrepresenting them because these people are talking about folks showing up in their region.
So
Why
in other words, they
don't we
are
have
talking about
things-
their own region.
Right.
So he's trying to simultaneously imply that they don't know what they're talking about because it's far away, and that it's the wrong region because they think Muhammad's there. Well, first of all, they don't think Muhammad's there. They're talking about his invading armies, right?
Exactly. They're talking about his armies. And why would it be that we wouldn't have records about the emergence of this cult before 634 in the Roman records? Because there is no Roman group that had any idea that they existed before then. They hadn't encountered them. They were outside the area of Rome. So putting their emergence in Damascus, I demand from Jay evidence of the emergence, evidence of something before then that caused these, because they didn't say, and around Damascus, they gathered the people together. No, there is no gathering that's happening. The gathering was in the desert, and now they're invading. They're invading with the people that they've already gathered way out in the desert, and Rome is just now becoming aware of these people. Same thing with Persia. They are unaware that these people exist. So that means that there are very few places in the world where you have Arabs who are far away enough from both Rome and Persia that people don't realize that they've built a flippin' empire very in its size, because it was very large in terms of miles, but they don't realize that they've done this because they are not yet at the borders of these empires. They're still far enough away.
Well, I don't think that, I mean, that is a valid explanation, but I don't think we even need an explanation. It's hardly weird that we don't have a contemporary record of Muhammad's birth or something along those lines, or his call to prophethood, or the first 10 years of his so-called prophethood when he had less than 24 followers. Why would we expect to have a record of that? Right? Why would we expect to have a contemporary record of that? That'd be moronic to expect to have a record of that. Do we have, by this logic, do we have any contemporary Jewish records of Jesus's ministry? Do we have any contemporary Roman records of the trial of Jesus?
No, because it wasn't that important at that time for them. But if there had been a heretical sect growing up under the noses of people with a self-declared prophet or prophets or warlords or whatever, people would have noticed. The nearby bishop would have noticed.
I mean, when it gets to a certain size, right? I mean, there's probably some moron in my city who's created a new cult, and no one's written anything about it because he has 10 followers. I mean, chances are good that exists, but I don't have any record of it because it's not important. It's not significant yet. Now, when Muhammad gets, tens of thousands of followers, sure, there's a good chance someone will notice. But when he has 20 followers, no one's going to notice or care. We wouldn't even notice or care today when we have like 1 million times more information being created on a daily basis. So why would we expect them to notice or care back then? We wouldn't.
Yeah, the bishop would have cared if it had been like when it reached the threshold of hundreds of people, the local bishop would be like, whoa, this needs to be smushed, and would have said something. And it would have picked up because people were very strenuous heresy hunters at that time, because there were people who were trying to, cause things to crop up. So if there had been something that emerged and couldn't be controlled, yeah, there would be records, but there aren't, because nothing happened in Syria.
Very convenient as there's no evidence in China, India, or Persia. Why in the world would you expect China or India? We'll get to Persia in a second. Why in the world would you expect there to be records, contemporary records of China, of something happening in the Arabian desert?
Yeah.
The only thing I could think of is if Muhammad actually did send out letters and they actually kept it, which why on earth would the Chinese emperor care about some
he didn't
random
get any
letter
letters from
nobody?
Muhammad. The first time that the Persian king does run to China and ask for help, and there are documents of the Shah running to China and begging for help from China, and they didn't really provide much help. But those records exist.
I left Persia off. I left Persia off intentionally because
there are tons of records of Persia.
Most of the Muslim records fraudulently come from Persia. Right? He'll be like, all these sources are from Persia, not there are extensive records from Persia because it's one of the first areas that Islam conquers.
There's not evidences of trade and commerce between Mecca or Muhammad's era and China. It just doesn't exist. I don't even know what you're talking about. You're being very silly.
You're just repeating a line you have no idea about.
You have no idea what you're saying, but that's fine.
Go find me a Chinese record of trade and commerce that lists the names of the, let's just say, ruler of some city. All right. Because that's what you're asking for. You're asking for a record that says we did X dollars of trade with Medina, and Muhammad was the ruler of Medina at that time. Go ahead and find me any example.
Even back when the Roman Empire was huge, China knew of the Roman Empire, but they weren't like writing who the emperor was all the time down or anything along those lines. And let's be honest, the emperor to Rome would have been much larger than Muhammad was when he was starting off.
Mm-hmm. Mel had proved it. Yeah. Mel proved that early Muslims were Chinese because he found a 14th century painting that depicts them as Persian, and he interpreted their small slanty eyes as being Chinese.
Yep. That's the level of research that Mel does. Any source he gives you, he is going to misinterpret or distort. Any source. Mel is not competent in dealing. Mel is monolingual to begin with. So he doesn't even have a concept of how other languages work, even at the most superficial level. And he is extraordinarily confused, doesn't bother to research how languages work, doesn't bother to try to learn anything about the languages that he's supposedly working in. And any piece that he brings you, he will distort and misrepresent.
Yeah, but by all means, bring the sources, right? I don't trust anything Mel says as being accurate. No. However, that doesn't mean that his sources couldn't be accurate. So by all means, bring the source, and I will take a look at it, and I will see what I think about it, right? I'm open to the possibility that there is evidence for a position. It's not like the position I have now is the identical position I had when I first started talking about Islam, right? I'm open to changing my position, but it has to be evidence, not someone said something. By someone, I mean some modern person, right? Some modern person said something is the case, because I want to see the evidence. I want to see the proof. And by the way, that's the same tactic I used to understand early Christianity or anything else that I consider important enough to put effort into. I want to see the evidence, right? Because I have seen many false claims being made about early Christianity by Christians too, right? It happens, right? Someone says something, it sounds good, other people repeat it without checking it themselves. Suddenly it becomes a popular statement, and it never had any basis in reality, right? It went through the telephone game, so to speak, got changed a little over time, and became inaccurate. So I want to see the primary source. I want to see the document. That's what a historian does. They go to the primary source. They go to the documents.
Yeah, and by
Yes,
the way,
the documents, not
Sasanian, or
the
excuse me,
artifacts.
yeah, the
documents.
Chinese were helping out the Sasanians, allowing them to have a kind of government in exile in hopes that they would be able to regain control of Persia. They weren't able to, but they appealed to China, went to China, became the Sasanian rulers in exile there. I'm not sure why you're saying, oh, it's this happy.
Yeah, he said he'd bring
Yeah,
the document,
it's
so let's just wait and see what he brings to
goofy.
the document. Continue with Jay's rebuttal here.
100 BC, the Ugaritic was introduced there. It's in your Old Testament. 11 times in Hebrew. Hebrew borrowed it from the Ugaritic. It's the same 4 letters that you see for Makbat that we use today. And it's actually, when you look at the Old Testament, look at Song of Songs 5:16. There is the altogether lovely one. So he is known as the praised one, the blessed one, the anointed one, the altogether lovely one. In the 4th century, we have the Saint Ambrose, who then took what Origen had said a century earlier and applied that Mahmad, the same word that you see in Syriac, that Mahmad, to the Messiah, the title for the Jesus Christ, the Messiah, which was then,
And literally, all of this is wrong. It's just false.
I was letting him finish.
Go for it.
About 4 other church fathers that came after it. So by the 7th century, it was well known in Arabic as the Messiah of the Praise. So it is a title.
All right. So supposedly Mahmed is a title for Jesus found in Ugaritic for some reason. I don't know why a title of Jesus would be found in Ugaritic, but found in Ugaritic and in the Old Testament 11 times, including Song of Solomon 5:16, might be a familiar verse to people who are doing dialogue with Muslims. And all the church fathers said this, and therefore it means Messiah. Okay, first of all, even if it was a title for Jesus, it would not make it the word mean Messiah. Right? Jesus has lots of titles. He is the Word. Does that mean that word means Messiah? No, of course not. So even if the word Mahmed, which means desirable thing, was a title for Jesus, it would still mean desirable thing. It would not mean Messiah. However, even ignoring that, literally not one word he said is true. Not one word of that is true. And it is horrible. It is terrible. And it is giving the Muslims an argument that Muhammad is in the Bible. He's granting that Muhammad is in the Bible. He's just saying Muhammad happens to be Jesus.
And let's be clear.
Horrific, this argument. It doesn't mean praised one in Ugaritic. It means desirable. It's an adjective.
Desirable.
It's an adjective in Ugaritic that means desirable. In Hebrew, it's a noun that means desirable thing or precious thing. It is used not 11 times, as Jay said, 12 or 13, depending on a verse in Lamentations. In the Masoretic text, it is pointed differently. The vowel, in other words, the vowels are different, but in the Dead Sea Scrolls, it appears to be Mahmed, so you might get a 13th, but it's either 12 or 13. 12 or 13 times, not 11, minor point, not that important. What is important is if you go read those passages, almost all of them are very, very negative. They could never be applied to Jesus by anyone. They're saying that the people are in rebellion and their precious objects are being taken away from them by God. Or in Ezekiel, his wife, the precious object of his eyes, is being taken away from him. So Ezekiel's wife is the Messiah now? Ezekiel's wife is Jesus? No one ever read it that way. Then we come to the claims about the church fathers. Origen, Mel has a quote supposedly from him, doesn't appear to be a real quote.
And it's not even the right language.
He says it's in, he says he has a Latin quote. Now, Origen wrote in Greek. He could have been translated into, some of his works are translated into Latin. However, I've not been able to find this quote. I don't believe it exists. Then it goes to Ambrose. Ambrose does have a quote about Psalm of Solomon 5:16. It is not about Jesus in any possible way.
It's about the church.
The word Jesus does not occur in the passage. In Ambrose's work, right? In Ambrose's work, Jesus does not occur in anywhere in the proximity of the quote, because he is talking about the transformation of the believer by the work of God. The believer becomes the desirable thing. That is what Ambrose says. And then he says, 4 more church fathers, 4 more church fathers. Yeah, one of those is supposedly John Cassian. As near as I can tell, he doesn't have any writing on Song of Solomon. Well, sorry, he has writing on Song of Solomon, but not on verse 5:16. So he can't possibly be, there's no justification for concluding that he said this as a title of Jesus. Additionally, what are the other ones? So we got Augustine, who Mel has another fake quote from. It is not a real quote. I know this one for fact is not a real quote because he gave the precise source. I went to that source. It has nothing remotely like that in the source that Mel said the quote is from.
Mel
It
is
appears
putting
to be made up by ChatGPT or another AI hallucination. I think he asked an AI for quotes from the church fathers about Song of Solomon 5:16, and it made up 2 quotes. The other 4 are real. None of them are about Jesus either, though. So he says, Slide says Gregory of Elvira, which is not correct. It's Gregory of Nyssa, who actually does have a quote about Jesus, or I mean about Song of Solomon 5:16, and it does mention Jesus this time. It does mention Jesus. But you know what? The mouth of sweetness is Jesus, and the desirable thing is the church, the body of Christ. So the again, desirable thing is not a title of Jesus in this work. Then we come to, there's a real quote attributed to Augustine, probably not actually by him, but it was written by someone in the time period. It also is about the believer being transformed by the work of God. The whole work is about living the Christian life. It's not a description of Jesus in this pseudo-Augustine work. And the last one is a fellow named Epaphras, who is otherwise unknown other than his commentary on Song of Solomon. He has a very long, extensive commentary on Song of Solomon, only available in Latin. I did the effort to go and find the Latin. It was not easy. It's a very obscure work. I found the Latin. He has a long, long description of the throat because in the Vulgate, the Latin translation of the Old Testament, mouth has become throat in translation. So he has a long description of the throat of Christ. And then when he comes to the word desirable, or which is now an adjective, not a noun. It was a noun in some of the other church fathers. But in Epaphras, it is now an adjective because in the Vulgate is an adjective. And he says, once again, that the body of Christ is the desirable. It is the thing made desirable in his analysis of how Song of Solomon is about Jesus. So 4 legitimate church fathers, or at least early Christian writers, since the one we don't really know who wrote it. 4 legitimate Christian early writers quote this verse. All of them, it's about either individual believers or the body of Christ, the church as a whole. None of them is a title of Jesus. And I'll have a video on this coming up, but it is just utter nonsense. Jay is just blindly repeating it, as near as I can tell, exclusively from the word of Mel, which apparently includes fake quotes made up by ChatGPT.
Yep, and I want to draw attention to the level of J. Smith's scholarship. J. Smith will present as fact a proper, even the AI hallucinations do not say what Mel claims they do. So he will take false framing, transparently false and deceptive framing of AI hallucinations given to him by Mel as fact to teach to the masses.
Or
And
to
this
use
is
in this
what,
debate, in this case.
yeah, and in this debate too. And he will do this. Is this something, Eric, that you would consider something that ought to be called out and not tolerated?
Absolutely. If unlike Islam, which is built off of lies and encourages and requires its followers to lie, and where Dawa is extremely prevalent in using weak sources or twisting anything to fit their desires, Christianity were called to a much, much higher standard, and it needs to be called out and needs to be engaged if they're half-assing it, to put it plainly.
And unfortunately, there is not one topic that he brings forward that is not distorted in this way. This is one of the most egregious ones because it's an affront to Christianity itself. But he misrepresents the coins like this. He misrepresents the maps like this. He misrepresents the language like this. He misrepresents the manuscripts like this. He misrepresents the earliest sources like this. Every single point that J. Smith brings up for his argument that Muhammad doesn't exist is distorted, twisted, fabricated, taken out of its context, presented in some other way, or just false. And that is an issue. We cannot allow Christians to argue like Muslims.
Frog One Dog 2 says, "Boo! No points for gifting subs. Boo! I thought I'd fix that. If I'll check. If you actually didn't get points, I will fix that. Thank you for pointing that out." So Jeremy said Song of Solomon message can refer to Messiah while also not referring to Muhammad isn't a binary issue. That is technically correct, of course, right? Technically speaking, that is correct. There are many passages of the Old Testament that refer to the Messiah that obviously don't refer to Muhammad. However, it doesn't refer to the Messiah either, right? Church fathers don't argue this. It is not a true factual statement. Well, okay, Song of Solomon in general, sure, they say it's a description of Jesus, but they don't say it points to the Messiah. They don't say that it's a prophecy of the Messiah. They say it's typologically connected to Christ and the church, which I actually just demonstrated even with that verse. But they say that particular verse is or at least that particular phrase is connected to the church, not to Christ. So they generally, the way the church fathers view Song of Solomon is typologically Christ and the church. Jews primarily, at least historically, saw it as God and Israel, typology there as well. But he is falsely making claims about the word Mahmed being a title of Jesus because of this typological reading of the whole book that doesn't even apply to the specific words in that passage.
Correct. And a major reason why it doesn't apply to the words in this passage is because many of the fathers looked at the passage that said that Christ is the head of the church. So whenever they went to Song of Songs, which describes the body, they go, well, the head.
That makes sense.
Right. The head is Christ.
That actually makes perfect sense, right? Because
that's what they're doing.
What the text is that his body, basically, it doesn't literally say body, but basically his mouth is sweet and his body is all desirable. A paraphrase, and thus it makes sense that they'd say the desirable is the church as opposed to Christ. Now, in context, it's about the lover, of course, not about God, but they're reading it typologically to connect it to God or to Christ or to the church, and this particular phrase is connected to the church. So according to J. Smith's logic, the church is Muhammad. Well, I guess if we want to be as generous as possible, I guess according to his logic, since this is what the church fathers actually say, is that it's the body of Christ, that we have a coin that says church on it, right? Because he claims that the coin says Messiah, and that's why it has crosses. But actually, it could say church and have crosses. So maybe that's the argument he should adopt if he wants his logic to work. But of course, it's just complete nonsense. The coin says MHMD because it's referring to Muhammad, and it has the crosses on it because people would not accept coins without crosses as valid currency at the time, as indicated by two roughly contemporary sources. So let's trust what the contemporary sources tell us, saying that the heathens tried to remove the cross, but the people wouldn't accept it, so they're forced to put the cross back on their coin.
Yep. I mean, we have 4 total Christian sources giving a coherent, cohesive, unified view about the reason the cross was on the coins and what it meant when it was taken off to the Christians of that time. We have these sources, 4 different testimonies from different locations, quite scattered around the empire, unconnected to one another, even different sects of Christianity. One of them is probably Oriental Orthodox, one is certainly Maronite, and the other 2 are probably Byzantine. So they're all in agreement about this. Testimony is together, united on this topic.
So
Yeah, Jeremy,
Jeremy
you still
says we are his
doesn't
body,
save it.
meaning the body of his. Well, I mean, we can debate whether you should read Song of Solomon that way. The church fathers did, but the body, if I were to say the body of Christ, would you say that's a title of Jesus? If I just said the body, would you say that's a title of Jesus? Or if I said the church, would you say that's a title of Jesus? Or I said the believers, is that a title of Jesus? Of course it's not. But it has to be. But Jay's argument is dependent on being a title for Jesus, a word that's synonymous with him, such to the extent that this is the only way anyone would understand that term out of context, right? So if I were just to say to someone on the street, just to illustrate how stupid this argument is, if I were to say to some Christian randomly, without any context, word, do you think they'd think that I was saying Jesus? Word actually is a title of Jesus.
Nope.
But that's all the coin would say is desirable, according to Jay.
Well, gold
people
is
would just know that means Jesus.
But the problem
Money
is it's
is
written in
desirable.
Arabic. So what is it? It's many praises. In Arabic, it's or the many praised one, or at least the praised one.
Right. It has to be connected to praise in Arabic. So apparently, they're saying in Arabic, praise, like, because we're pretending it's not Muhammad for a second. They're saying in Arabic, praise, and somehow, because church fathers describe Jesus as desirable in their language, right, in Greek or in Latin, not in Hebrew, somehow they would know that the Arabic word for praise corresponds to Jesus because the Hebrew word for desirable has the same letters in it. That is the argument. Even though none of these people spoke Hebrew, literally none of them spoke Hebrew, somehow they would know that the Arabic word that has a meaning is really a reference to the Hebrew letters. It's just pure insanity. Pure insanity. There's no other way to describe it other than pure insanity to say this is a valid argument. You want to argue about the interpretation of the coin? Knock yourself out. You want to argue that all the sources, all 15 or so references to Muhammad are all 15 different people? Knock yourself out. You want to say all these sources are actually 20th century frauds, fake manuscripts? Whatever, knock yourself out. But don't say that Muhammad means Messiah, and therefore everyone recognized this as a title of Jesus. It's pure insanity. Pure insanity.
Yep.
All right, let's continue.
Now, whether you like that or not, we can't sit there and just say we must not look at what these men are saying. You made a big thing of whether you're going with.
Hey, Jay, why haven't you looked at what these men are saying?
Yeah,
seriously, why haven't you looked at what they're saying?
Why have you not looked up any of these sources? Why do you say that Mel is your best researcher and he feeds you AI slop and you just repeat it and deceives you about even what they mean and you repeat it? Look it up. And it's funny because he's like, oh, you haven't read this. You haven't read that. Jay Smith has not read any of this stuff. It's bad.
So Jedediah, there's 2 possibilities. Some comments only appear under live chat. And so if you have top chat on, that's one possibility. Another possibility is that YouTube blocked it.
And it does that sometimes.
Which it does, right?
You nothing that you have said has been deleted by any of us. I can
Correct.
see if
Right.
it has been.
Nothing has been intentionally deleted.
Yep.
So
should
either
not delete anything.
you just didn't see it because you were on Top Chat and it only appeared on live, or YouTube blocked it entirely. Yeah. Is Jay vomiting and Smith swallowing? I
Pretty much.
don't like those exact terms, but yes.
I mean, like, and he's like, these are what the scholars say, and then he cites Mel, the school teacher. I'm sorry, but you cannot appeal to authority and then have your main source, your main person who is articulating most things that you are presenting, be a school teacher. I'm not saying that a school teacher can't be a good researcher, but I'm saying that if your plea, if your appeal is an appeal to authority,
Yep.
why are you going to a school teacher? He wants to have everything each way.
I mean,
He wants to have
it's not wise to do.
And Mel.
If he's going to teach these things, he shouldn't be appealing to authority, period. Right. He should be
No.
able to. It's okay for like a random person to form their opinions by appeal to authority. As long as it's a legitimate authority. It's not okay for someone teaching this under their own authority to appeal to authority, in my opinion. But if he is going to appeal to authority at all, it damn well better be an accredited, peer-reviewed research scholar, not just some theories that someone's come up with off the top of their head.
Oh,
That
and
literally
by
no
the
one has
way,
investigated.
Oleg, his book is self-published, where he collects the things of other whack job, extreme conspiracy theorists. He has his own little publishing, self-published arm. It's self-published. It is not published by even a university press. University press stuff often doesn't even go through peer review. Journal does, even though peer review is sometimes like very superficial. But when you're but the stuff that's just published by a university press many times does not go through any peer review. But his stuff isn't even published by university press. It is self-published. If you are a professor, you have massive access to peer-reviewed journals and to university publishers. If you are not using either one, there will be a reason.
Yep. Well, I mean, there could be, it could just be, you know, you just don't care or laziness but there would be a reason. Self-publishing is based when it's not nonsense. Mary knows a thing or two about self-publishing.
Yeah, it makes
advantage for
quite a bit more money. I mean, self-publishing is great for a lot of things, but here's the thing. If you are a professor, your outlet, why would you pay for all this stuff yourself when you can knock on the university press and they will just do it for you? It's one of the benefits of being the professor. You don't
and
have
to be
to
clear,
do
you're not
either.
making money from publishing academic books.
No, you're not making any money from publishing academic stuff. When you go to a major publisher, you will typically make more money than academic press. So sometimes they'll publish your major publisher for something that has a greater appeal. But if you're going to your university press, they're going to be able to set the price at $250 and do all this internal marketing to other universities and get university libraries to buy it, which they are unlikely to do if it is self-published. Like, you are working inside of the structure and the system. So you use that structure and system for the dissemination of your material. And it tends to be much better reviewed, much better received, much better authenticated or checked on or accepted by peers if you do it.
Yeah. So to be clear here, just to be clear, I'm not saying that if something's self-published, it's inherently false. I'm saying that you shouldn't be appealing to the authority of something that is not checked in any way. You could be writing true things. You could be writing that space monsters ate Muhammad's brain, and it would still be published either way, right? So if it's not been peer reviewed, not that peer review is infallible, that everything that's peer reviewed is true, right? Generally, it just has to be cogent. It just has to make sense to be published. It doesn't have to be true in peer review. But at least there's some sort of check. If you're going to appeal to something's authority, it better actually have authority. And a self-published book or the researching of a random person doesn't have any authority. Don't appeal to me. In other words, don't appeal to me or Mary or Eric as authority. Appeal to the sources that we're providing you. The appeal to the arguments we're giving. Don't say, Thaddeus is so smart, or Mary's so smart, or Eric's so smart. I know that what they say is correct. Don't do that. Please.
I don't know if they
please
say
don't
the last
do that.
one, yeah, don't.
No.
That's why we give you the sources. That's why we give you the references, so you can check us, so you can look into it.
Yeah, a lot of times you'll find on my slides will be in tiny print sources, because I myself go back and use and consult those sources a lot of times too, because I'm not making this up. Bluntly, I'm not making this up. I actually have real sources that I'm going to, whatever they are. Like, I can't just know about things through osmosis, right? There are real things that show evidence for something.
Academics have threat to life, don't you know that? And how would self-publishing remove any potential threat from a jihadi?
No, it wouldn't. And nothing that Oleg said would be upsetting to a university press. It's just that it's ridiculous, frankly.
And I'm not even saying it's impossible he could have got it published. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're going to appeal to it, it's got to at least be academically public for authority, right? If you're going to appeal to it for authority, not for arguments. If you want to bring the arguments, whatever, bring the arguments from whatever you want. But if you're going to appeal to authority, and that's what Jay does, whether he discloses it or not, because he doesn't do any of his own research. He's just appealing to the authority of other people without actually disclosing he's appealing to the authority of other people. He's just presenting their ideas as established fact. Of course, No Uni funds all of this. Well, what do you mean, of course, Cargo Crew? Stephen Shoemaker is a revisionist.
And again, Oleg
his works are academically published.
And Oleg is, guess what? On staff at a university, but for some reason the university wouldn't publish his big anthology that has most of these crackpot claims.
So, I mean, what do you mean you can't?
He's
Christoph
teaching
Luxemburg
classes.
Is academically published. Patricia Crone was academically published. So what do you mean that no university will fund this? Universities are not like in love with Islam, right? There's tons of academic research published about Islam every year, quite a lot of it in contradiction to Muslim beliefs. Do the people get killed? No. Do they get threatened? Maybe occasionally. Right? Reynolds, I believe, has been threatened. But he publishes work critical of Islam, or at least critical of Muslim beliefs.
But at this point, there's getting to be so many targets that they can't keep up with the threats, which is kind of nice.
I mean, to say that you have to self-publish something because otherwise you'd be under threat, you're under just as much threat if you self-publish it. So it just doesn't make any sense.
Nor would what he is publishing be generally offensive to Muslims, to be clear, because he's mostly attacking Christianity.
No, Patricia Crone did not have to retract
because she was wrong. Crona realized that she was a fool to have some of her claims.
That's too harsh, Mary. She realized some of her claims were wrong after further research.
Well, what happened was she realized that every bit of her belief about the Quran being from later than the 7th century is absolutely bogus and could not at all be supported even vaguely. So she had to completely reverse course on the age of the Quran. And Michael Cook, his specialty turned into early Quran sources. Her co-author became a major proponent of these early Quran, what's in them, studying them, getting them dated, everything else, because he's like, wow, I was completely off. This is a ridiculous point. And he threw away everything that he had in that first book. That's why he's still appealing to Crona, because she still wants to say that it happened farther north for some insane reason because of her feelings, even though it could not have happened there because there were no pagans there. But Patricia Crona backed off because information about the Sanaa manuscript and tons of others became accessible. She was totally wrong, and she admitted it on the things that
That's
she
what
could not
academics
possibly
do,
defend
right?
anymore.
Academics are willing to revise their position in light of new evidence. And Patricia Crone, because she's a legitimate, good academic, when she was alive, she's now deceased, but when she was alive, she revised her theories in light of pushback, in light academic pushback, not Muslim jihadis telling her to get rid of this. Academic pushback saying this idea is great, this idea is not credible. So she revised some of her ideas in light of that pushback, in light of her own research, because she was academically honest. That's all.
Now, real quick, according this whole thing kind of falls apart about the whole death threats thing, according to based upon what Jay says, because Jay says he used to get death threats all the time. Then he started to do this no-mo theory, and now he doesn't get them at all.
Yep.
So
weird.
The concept that, oh, you wouldn't publish this in academia because you would get death threats if you did. First of all, it's the content that you're publishing that would get the death threats, not necessarily where you're going through. But even then, that specifically contradicts what Jay says, which is, I don't get death threats anymore because of the content I'm focusing on. That just throws that argument out the window.
Mm-hmm. And Garibaldi here is not inaccurate. Prevailing paradigm of early Islamic history and academia till like 5 years ago is there. Well, it's slightly overstated, but that the early Islamic sources were worthless. I would say unreliable, not quite the same thing as worthless. Howard Johnson and Sean Anthony Inter Ali have since pushed back. In other words, academics were publishing material critical of Islamic history. Yasser Qadi himself, in remarks that are not nearly as famous as other remarks, admitted that Yale totally tore down the building of Islam, by which he means early Islamic history. And he has told on public record Muslims not to study early Islamic history because there is no benefit and no value in doing that, because he learned at academia it's not very credible. But we're technically not talking about Muhammad and his companions, and we're talking about early Islamic history here. We're talking about what happens after that. Lots of myths and stuff evolved around that in Islamic literature. No one, however, no one in academia was saying Muhammad didn't exist. Well, I shouldn't say no one.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people
there,
threw out essentially the ahadith were not taken seriously as more than a very, very, very broad sketch. Like any particular hadith was not taken seriously at all by academia at any time. Like, did he do this one thing? Academics would say, who knows? But
yeah, exactly.
There's more.
So,
yeah.
Garibaldi, said the same thing as what I did, right? Unreliable in regards to the Islamic conquest. That's what I meant by when I said not technically Muhammad, but yes. The conquest, the narrative around the conquest.
But there are a lot of narratives within Muhammad's life that can be supported beyond reasonable doubt. Let's put it that way. And I've been kind of slowly working on compiling them. And I do, at some point, I've got to publish academically because this is getting ridiculous.
Yeah.
These people are
yes, you do, Mary.
ticking me off, and I need to publish academically.
And then we can appeal to the authority of Mary because she'll be a published academic.
Because I'll be a published academic. If anybody will give me a heads up on a PhD program that I won't have to pay for because I ain't paying for one. I'm not.
Need a PhD.
I will not pay for a degree. Then, like, I didn't pay for most of my first degree, so I ain't paying for any more. Well, degrees. So.
Yeah. Anyway. Let me take the super chat from Gene K. Capra.
Wasting your time on social media is one of the best deeds a Muslim can do. There's a huge need for it. You know this and I know this. So that makes the reward even greater. So give generously and Allah Azza wa Jal will give you even more.
One of your brother in Christ's favorite clip that's there. Thank you for the donation. Can you make a playlist of Was Muhammad real videos from this and other channels? I could. I also have a playlist of Muhammad mythism of the videos on my channel. I'll go ahead and put that in the chat. Today's video won't be in it yet, but I will add it to it. And if there are other videos that you think are beneficial that are part of other channels, I'd be happy to add those as well. I'll add Jai's live stream, for example, to that list. And Unana says, I don't know if you've ever used wikiislam.net, but it's a treasure trove. Indeed, it is. Good resource there. All right. I do need to be done. I do need to be done by 3, so we need to get back to the video, and we need to keep our comments a little briefer. We got 8 minutes to get through, and I got like 50 minutes to do so, so we should be okay, but I just want to put that out there.
Don't hold your breath.
Make a big difference whether it's a D or a T, because if it's with a D, that's the Arab spelling. If it's with a T, that's the Persian spelling. So that's where you can place it. That's why it's important that you do get the right 4 letters and you put it in the right place. You talked about Patricia Corona, that she didn't really talk. In fact, she was quite willing to say there was a Muhammad. Well, that's perfectly okay because she never really confronted Muhammad. That was not her area of expertise. Her area of expertise was looking at Mecca. That's why she wrote Hagarism and Meccan Trade and the Rise of Islam. And then she went into Roman law after that. Now, she died in 2015. If she would now be here today, she would be right with us because we're now turning our attention to Muhammad. We didn't do so.
That was a little slimy. Saying that Patricia Crone would be right with us if she was still alive. How could you possibly know that, Jay?
And that's
how dare you invoke her authority?
It's entirely false. She denies that anything but that non-historical Muhammad. She also says that the Quran was indeed in the 7th century. Both of those she was very firm on. And here, Jay Smith is trying to invoke her and still use her authority to support him in things that she would have never supported. That is not acceptable.
Does Raymond own any non-blue shirts? Theoretically, but we don't know.
We don't know. Yeah, people noticed that he only has blue shirts on, and he was like, "Oh, I hadn't noticed I do that."
Earlier than that. That's why I said I'm not ready to do this debate yet. Now, when you go back to the Sunni Shia, that bothered you an awful lot bit, and it bothers you because it's a problem today. It's a huge problem today that you just can't figure out how that could have started without thinking, when is the first time that this has been referred to? Where's the first time that we hear about?
Hang on, stop that.
Al-Bukhari.
You can't figure it out. Dirty, dirty, dirty man. How dare you say you can't figure it out? No, Jay Smith can't figure it out. Jay Smith can't give an explanation for it. We have a narrative. We have a narrative that begins with the marriage of Salama and also with his marriage to Aisha. Aisha and Salama are the 2 key points. We have it. Right. And yes, you're right. Imagine characterizing Patricia Conant's expertise as being on the existence of Mecca. Yeah, it is pretty ridiculous because she threw out Mecca immediately. She's like, no, Mecca. I will just throw this out and I will put it here for these reasons. But all of her expertise was really on other things. And some of which she made fantastically good points on, like her Meccan trade saying that was centered on leather. 100% right. And do you know what she did to find out that was centered on leather? She went to the Islamic sources. Like, she went to the Islamic sources. She's like, here's what they describe in trade. They describe these things going out and these things. It's leather, people. And I'm like, wow, she's right. It's leather. Like she made many very good points, just to be clear. But yeah, it is.
Yeah, I mean, but yes, to Jay, her most important thing is saying Mecca doesn't exist, but that's not the center of her research, right? That's not what she's known for in academia. But it's like, see, she was all about Mecca. We're all about Muhammad. If she was alive today, she'd be with us. She'd be all about Muhammad not existing. I mean,
no,
it's just not fair, right? It's just not genuine to claim her authority for your propositions that she had nothing to do with.
Well, going back to what Jay said in this, the whole Shia Sunni split if you look at the Islamic sources, make perfect sense from just a logical standpoint as far as humanity itself. Because reading the sources, you could get where, oh, that sounds like maybe you could interpret it this way, or you could interpret it this way, and that's where you could get the split. Okay, did he kill her or did he not kill her? Who's the one who's really in charge of this? It just looks like the same sort of intrigue that we see that's throughout any other kingdom. Any other
Yes.
time you have a transition of power from one person to another, you get some sort of inheritance going on, a new king coming up, anything like that, you get these sort of levels of intrigue. Now,
Mm-hmm.
happened whenever Christianity came because it wasn't set up that way and various other reasons. But when it's a person-based authority like this getting transferred to a new person, you get these sort of backbiting sort of betrayals that are going on that leave a lot of gray zone.
Oh,
Like,
and let's move back before that, right? Before even this interpersonal thing, there were two major factions in Mecca. Folks in the chat, how many of you heard of these factions? I talked about a really long time ago, haven't brought it up hugely since then. There was the Alliance of the Allies, which is the dumbest name ever, but that was their name. The Alliance of the Allies, or the Confederation of the Confederates. And there was the Alliance of the Perfumed Ones, or the Confederation of the Perfumed Ones. And they were the two big rival factions in Mecca before Muhammad declared that he was a prophet. And in one of them, Muhammad's family belonged to, and it became the League of Virtue later on. The Perfumed Ones became the League of Virtue, although one group defected and went over to.
Hey, I want to be
the
part of
Alliance
the League of
Allies.
Virtue, Mary. That's what I
But-
want my group to be called.
Yeah, well, Muhammad's group was part of the League of Virtue. They were against being really strict on not allowing foreigners to trade in a certain area, within their bounds. Instead, they wanted to have more friendly relations and other things. But League of Virtue involved Muhammad's family and its clan, Abu Bakr's clan, but Umar and Uthman's clan and the Umayyads and the Makhzum clan, they were in the other one. They were in the Alliance of Allies. I feel stupid every time I say this, but they're the Alliance of Allies. And those were the two big factions. So when Muhammad's more pro-outsider group in general, Ali was the representative of that, was the inheritor of that after, and was their figurehead as well. So it goes back to these pre-Islamic factions that we find in the Islamic sources. And the whole reason why Uthman invoked Abu Bakr in the creation of his Quran is because he needed to have somebody from representing this League of Virtue and not just the Alliance of Allies, to say that this is a united Meccan Quran, rather than pointing out that it was assembled by Umar. He's like, well, it happened under Abu Bakr, so it's still a Bakri Quran. We can say that. So, like, all of this goes back to real historical events that continue to shape the dynamics between the different clans within Islam throughout history. And yet, let's see how Jay Smith's going to portray it.
Yep. A couple alternate suggestions here. League of Legends. Yep, that's a good one. Or League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Also a one there. And then Cargo says, Reason Answer says, now taking a bizarre stand of totally propagating hadiths now. Total benefit without betrayal.
No.
If that's what you got from this, I have no clue.
You need,
I guess because I said that the leather trade comes from the hadith, that somehow means I say all hadith are 100% true.
Patricia Krona used the hadith and the Islamic sources to support her leather trade theory.
Indeed. All right.
Now, you say that Al-Bukhari is someone you can trust. Let me just put this up here. I wish I had a bigger screen. But see,
And he never said that.
the al-Bukhari comes from
Correct. Raymond didn't say you can trust al-Bukhari.
this time.
This is just dirty, and now he's going to play games with you.
Al-Bukhari until some fragments start to appear in the 11th century. And what's fascinating, we don't have a complete al-Bukhari. The al-Bukhari you're reading that talks about the Sunni Shiite comes from the 14th and 15th century, way over here. That's 700 years after Muhammad.
That is not fascinating, Jay. That is perfectly ordinary and expected.
Yep.
The first complete New Testament doesn't come until the 4th century. Does that mean we don't have the New Testament now? You're saying we don't have Bukhari because it doesn't come until the 14th century, which is 700 years after the time of Muhammad.
There we go. And
500 years after the time it's written. I mean, the New Testament, 400 years after the time it's written. Bukhari, 500 years after the time it's written.
And
seriously,
he's talking to a historian that knows the issues with history and being able to get actual documentation of events. I mean, we're spoiled nowadays. We got phones everywhere, and even then you don't even know what actually happened. So if you don't know what actually happened like last week, then how are you supposed to even have a grasp on what's supposed to have happened 2,000 plus years ago if you're going and saying that you have to get documentation from the actual event? Again, the whole thing about the Gospels is so crazy, historically speaking, because they're 4 different accounts all within the lifespan of the first eyewitnesses. That is just mind-blowingly close as far as history goes.
Mm-hmm. I'll put Jay back to normal speed because he is talking quite fast now.
It's the Bukhari that you're now talking about, the Shiite-Sunni divide. If you want to talk about the Sirah of Muhammad, which supposedly came from Ibn Ishaq, no, we don't have any of that. From Ibn Hisham, so you say Ibn Ishaq or Ibn Hisham are right here. We don't have any manuscript that even appears from the Sirah until the 11th century. We have 5 other manuscripts that appear from the 13th to the 16th century, but were not put together into the Sirah that we use today until Wustenfeld put it together in 1860. That's 160 years ago.
Yeah, so the text critical New Testament wasn't put together until at least Textus Receptus, right? If you want to consider that a text critical text. What is it? Yeah, so I mean, the common translation of the life of Muhammad does some level of text critical work where it takes the parts that are recorded in Al-Tabari, which Jade never mentions for some reason, but the parts that are in Al-Tabari of Ibn Ishaq that Ibn Hassam left out, he recovers them from Al-Tabari and reinserts them into the text. For some reason, Jay never mentions Al-Tabari, and those aren't the only 2. And there's about 5 other versions of Ibn Ishaq as well. We can recover the original text.
Right.
It's a
Because we
thing.
have all of these testimonies to the text from different separate sources with different textual historical origins and things. That means that we can be more certain of the text than if we had a singular copy from much earlier.
Yep.
More certain
That
of
is
the
correct.
text. And it is
Yep.
just
That's textual criticism.
that's just basic textual criticism, and saying anything else is either ignorant or dishonest.
Yep.
So we have to decide which one Jay Smith is.
Well, I don't have to decide. I can just leave those 2 options.
Yep,
open,
I can leave it open, but people need to decide that he is one or the other, or might be both, or might be either.
Yep. There's no legitimate way to make this argument with a straight face, though, and say, well, the text critical version doesn't come until the 18th century, so we don't really have the text before the 18th century. That's just silly.
So the man that you're looking for, the man that you're dependent on for the Sunni Shiite divide, comes from actually a German scholar who put that in there and used that part as.
I mean, put that in there. Pathetic. Pathetic.
As if he just added it
on the spot. He just added that on the spot. He made it up.
That's sad because it does come from Al-Tabari, right? It's not made up. Ibn Hashim tells you in his introduction, and Jay likes to point this out, as do other nomos, that Ibn Hashim tells you that he left out the most embarrassing parts of the biography of Muhammad. And so they were brought back in the modern text critical versions from other sources, primarily Al-Tabari, but also about 5 other minor versions of it. but apparently he just arbitrarily added that to the
You have
text.
these two different political problems, because really the Sunni Shia is not a theological problem, it's a political problem, which is normal when you have people trying to find out who takes the mantle of the prophet. And you have the Persians and the Arabs.
Wait a minute. How he just said it's a political divide, not a theological divide, who are trying to take the mantle of the prophet, but the prophet doesn't exist according to Jay. He just undermined his own argument. Yep. Right? Because Raymond's argument is that you can't explain the Sunni Shia divide without there being an existing Islam that people are fighting over. And then Jay says, this is perfectly normal political divide about people who are fighting over who is the legitimate heir of the prophet.
And by the way, he's like, oh, the Persians and the Arabs. The first Shia caliphate was Arab. It was Arab. So who are these Persians who did not yet exist yet? It was Arab. The Fatimids are Arabs. They were Arabs leading an Arab kingdom. How is there this racial tension here when that didn't even exist yet? You're jumping ahead hundreds of years.
All right. Let's continue.
And it's during the Abbasid period that this comes to a fruition, because the Abbasids are not in the line of the prophet. That's why they put into their
what do you mean the line of the prophet? You believe the Abbasids created Islam?
Reference. That
yep. And furthermore,
that it came from
the Umayyads aren't from the line of the prophet. Are you on crack?
Ulema, and it did not come from the prophet's line. Now that then was
so did the Umayyads come from the prophet's line then, Jay?
Embellished, and there was the enormous amount of accretions and deletions and corruptions from the 9th century, because I'm sure there was.
Show me.
Buhari, but
he's sure there was. It doesn't
he's sure
exist,
there was. He has
sure there was.
Feelings. Here's the fact: we have two separate documents in which this was preserved, and these documents agree with one another, except in a few points where Ibn Hisham has taken out things that are massively damaging to Islam, and he didn't realize it. That's why it was in there. He didn't realize that they were, because Ibn Ishaq didn't realize that they were stupid or embarrassing. So that's why they were there in the first place, right? And
he means the persona of the
Ibn
supposed
Hisham,
prophet, but you can't have a divide over a supposed prophet when you are creating Islam. According to Jay, the Abbasids invented Islam, but they're dividing because they're so here's what Jay's theory would actually have to be, right? Some guy makes up Islam and his buddy is like, hey, I'm the legitimate follower of the prophet. You aren't. But then they divide, saying, oh, I'm the legitimate follower of this thing I just made up. No, I'm the legitimate follower of this thing you just made up.
Yes.
Does that make sense to you?
Not in the least. And they both agree on the narrative and agree on a narrative to explain why they are killing each other. You say this about me and I'll say this about you, and we will both agree on that. That's madness.
Tribals go nuts over anything.
Yeah, tribals would go nuts over anything, but they won't just make up stories about each other and each one agree on the story that the other one makes up.
The other just telling, exactly. If you're if guy number one is making this up, why in the world is guy number two feel obligated to agree with guy number one, who is his enemy and wants to fight him?
Yep.
Said, you just made up this story about me. I agree with that story, but you're wrong.
Yes. That is basically it. Like, it's crazy. It's madness.
The fact that we don't have any of his documents is because there have been so many accretions and deletions until he was finally put together in the form we have today in
made up.
14th and 15th.
No evidence of
volumes
this
that we use. So that shows that this was used to create that Sunni Shiite divide. I can't tell you yet when that started, Raymond, but I can tell you that it did not happen in the 7th century. This is something that.
How do you know?
During the Abbasid and during the Ottoman.
Sorry, you just said, I don't know when this happened. I have no clue when it started. Oh, but it definitely didn't start here. No, that's not how logic works. That's just utter nonsense.
He can't fit it anywhere in his theory yet, but he knows it can't be the 7th century because that would destroy his theory, is basically what he's saying.
Period. Now you talk about the Fatima again, made up. Listen, everything you know about Fatima comes from the 11th.
The Fatimids.
So Raymond wasn't
are
talking
made up.
about Fatima. He was talking about the Fatimites.
Fatimids.
Or
Not
Fatimids,
Fatima.
whatever. Fatimids who claimed descendants from her. So they now are claiming descendants from a person they know is made up, according to, or actually hasn't even been made up yet, according to them.
Yes, has not yet been made up.
Makes
Okay,
a lot
I
of
am
sense.
correct. I thought it was Fatimid all along, but Raymond Ibrahim here saying Fatimid was throwing me off. It is Fatimid. Fatimid.
I didn't know, so I was going with Raymond's pronunciation.
Yeah, so was I. And even in Arabic, I thought it was Fatimid would be the accent, and it is. I think he's saying it the way a lot of Americans do, rather than giving.
So
it
an I-90, but
that's
you have totally
Fatimid.
destroyed and refuted Raymond Ibrahim.
I am not losing my mind here. It really is Fatimid, because I've said Fatimid the whole time, and I've been like, when I heard him say that, I'm like, am I even pronouncing it right? So I decided to look it up. So it is Fatimid. Good.
Fatima. No, we're not going to pronounce it Fatima. Sorry.
Into the 16th century. So I'm going to come right back to the same problem. Then you get into the problem with embarrassment. I would suggest that what is embarrassing is it's embarrassing to you because you're comparing Muhammad with Jesus. And we have to be careful, because when I talk to Muslims face to face and I bring up some of these problems that you brought up, they just say, well, that's typical. That's normal of any prophet. If he had these proclivities, if he had these problems with his sexuality, if he had these difficulties with demonization, if he wanted to commit suicide, every prophet goes through these crises. But what do? Subvert those prophecies, and they come victorious out of it.
No.
Wait, what Muslim
says
is he
that.
talking about?
No Muslim says that, and I have no idea why he brought this up. He's just making stuff up. He really wants to debate like embarrassment.
Yeah, well, because he wants to debate David again, basically, because he knows David's only going to bring the embarrassment argument. Because David doesn't care as long as it makes Islam look bad.
The current narrative about the prophets from every Muslim that I've talked to, and I've had quite a few call in, I have never heard them say, oh yeah, it's no big deal that they were, committed major sin. They just didn't stay in it. No.
No. They deny that he commits major sins. They deny, these days, they deny the satanic verses. They just deny it. Even though all of early Islam affirmed it, they deny it. They do not say that he had problems with his sexuality. They do not say this. Jay Smith, cite the Muslim who says this to you, because
I'm sure you could probably find some Muslims somewhere. I mean, there are a billion Muslims in the world, and I'm sure you could find some Muslims somewhere, but it's certainly not what all Muslims say or an ordinary Muslim claim. And that's beside the point, right? That's beside the point.
It's not an argument.
Even if Muslims today, like for example, they will definitely, many Muslims today will say, well, it was just normal to marry children at the time.
Yeah, but sexual problems.
But here's the actual problem. It wouldn't have been normal at the time, which means they made it up in a time where supposedly made it up in a time where it wasn't normal and acceptable. The reason Muslims may say, if they accept these narratives, which they generally don't, but if they accept these narratives about, being possessed by demons or satanic verses or whatever, the reason they'll accept it is because they already believe in Muhammad, not because it wasn't embarrassing at the time of Muhammad. And we know that some of these things were embarrassing because they're used as Christian polemics against early Islam. And the Muslims feel the need to push back. And especially the story of Zainab, it literally is in the Quran that Muhammad had to get new revelations to explain his previous revelation that the people wouldn't accept. It obviously was embarrassing.
Yep.
Obviously.
And you can see the polemics that Christians used show you what bothered Muslims at that time. It bothered Zainab bothered Muslims. The fact that Muhammad supposedly was first affirmed by a Christian bothered Muslims. It bothered Muslims that he was possessed. All of these things did bother Muslims at that time. It bothered them because there are polemics about these things.
Padilla and Al-Zut.
Christians didn't find out about those.
Yeah, we didn't know about this.
Muhammad is that he did continue in those perversions. He continued, got out of it, and then showed that this is the model for today. And most
Again, the standard
No.
Islamic doctrine today is that the prophets are never commit major sin. At most, they have some minor errors. At most Muslims will just say they're literally perfect, that they don't have any error, but at most minor error.
Yeah, I'm still his statement there about, all the Muslims are telling me this. No. Have you, sorry, I'd almost say, have you actually talked to a Muslim recently? Because I get the opposite. If you're being honest, I get the extreme opposite from every single encounter. Even those who I've talked outside of mosques, and they say, I don't know anything about Islam. I ask about the prophets, and they still tell me that they've never sinned, and that it's one of the major things against Christianity because the prophets sin in the Bible, even though they repent of it. The prophets sin. I don't know how many times King David has been brought up as being proof that the Bible is corrupt because he slept with Bathsheba and had her husband killed, even though he repented of it.
Yeah, and to be clear, by the way, Zainab nearly brought down Islam at the time. It nearly split the Ummah. People were like, this is too convenient of a revelation. Maybe he's a false prophet. It was a huge thing, especially the women. The women were super against this. And that's why Muhammad had all of these sudden oppressive rulings about beating your wives and making them wear veils to shut them up.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure if this was a joke, right? Like the person of Zainab bothering Muslims, but the story definitely bothered them quite a bit. And Jeremy says, minor errors, like bringing your buddy out to the desert to watch you get boofed by Al-Suit.
Muslims come back to me and say, yes, what did Jesus do? What kind of perversions did he get involved in that he was able to subvert and control? Because
since it's directly, isn't he at Speaker's Corner almost every Sunday? He does talk to Muslims a lot. Jay visits Speaker's Corner about once a year. He lives in the United States. He, in the past, like 10 plus years ago, he went to Speaker's Corner all the time, but he's long past that phase of his life, just to be clear.
that's what they want prophets to do. And they love Muhammad because he was a leader of men. He was married, he had children, he had multiple wives, and he shut down all of his adversaries. What did Jesus do? He did none of that. I would rather follow Muhammad than Jesus. So most Muslims, when they bring this up out of embarrassment, it's embarrassing to you, it's not to them. When you talk about Alexander Herodotus,
whether it's embarrassing to other Muslims or not is irrelevant. It would have been embarrassing to the people who wrote it.
And even then, again, I'd have to say that it definitely is.
I know
how many times I've had conversations with talking about Muhammad commanding prayer to himself. That's a major issue.
Mm-hmm.
Or even the references. I mean, Mary, you and I were on together where we pointed out about it to the Muslim there about Muhammad saying that Allah had commanded him to lust after this woman.
And he freaked out.
He freaked out about it. Now, he
and that is a normal reaction. That is a normal reaction. Yeah, it really did. Zainab, because captive women were part of their culture before Hum said you couldn't have them anymore. So raping captive women, they were already on board with that. They're pagans, right? But this whole, like, suddenly a law allowing what was previously incest and saying that he had him lust after a married woman, so he would do this thing that was previously incest just to tell you it isn't incest. That was a massive source of drama in the community.
Yep.
And again, he had a great response to it that, no, this is definitely bugging me. This is wrong. He had a great response to it. I'm very thankful for that. But it is definitely something he found to be embarrassing.
So yes, using the story of Zainab definitely bothered Muslims who didn't have a problem with intercourse with married captive women because it was considered incest, right? And that is why it wasn't so much that Muhammad stole someone else's wife. It was that he stole his son's wife, and thus it would be considered incest.
Yeah, but once he got everybody taken down, like, one of his privileges is that if he lusts after anybody's wife, they have to divorce him and give him to her. Like, that became one of his privileges after this point too. So, like, really messed up.
I assume this is a joke. Becca is short for Rebecca, so Mecca is called Becca.
I mean that's close to Islamic uses of Becca and trying to equate it to
Uh-huh.
the Valley of Tears in the Bible.
Yep.
There we go.
Cargo Crew says Mary takes way too many creative licenses.
I'm not
which is
taking any
hilarious.
creative liberties.
You
Not at
literally are
all.
saying what the sources say, but
Yes,
that's a creative license.
I'm
But
saying
reinterpreting all the
Yep.
sources is not creative license.
So
Got
it's
it.
okay to make up stories about sources, but it's not okay to actually tell you what the sources tell you.
Yep.
William Wallace and all these guys, we have so much on them, you say. The problem is we trust them because they fit the right man at the right place, doing the right thing at the right time. When you look at Jesus, he fits the right man at the right place, doing the right thing at the right time. It's when you get to Muhammad.
What?
Jesus Mythers would disagree.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
why are you saying it's the wrong place? Because you just assert that. Why do you say that he's the wrong person? Because you falsely claim that. Why do you say it's the wrong time? I don't know, because you're on crack. I really have no idea why it's the wrong
No,
time.
I mean, literally all three of those things are claims made by atheist Jesus Mythers. I'm not just
Yeah,
saying
it
that
is.
arbitrarily. They'll say Nazareth didn't exist. He's in the wrong place, right? Nazareth doesn't exist. Jesus is in the wrong place. They'll say that Tacitus doesn't get his name right. It's not the same guy. It's a different person, right? Because he says Christus. His name isn't Christus. It's not even Christ. So wrong guy. And then they'll point to some confusion about who was the emperor at the time of Jesus's birth, and they'll say, look, it's the wrong time, right? Some Christian authors got confused as to who was the emperor. Much later Christian authors who wouldn't have any reason to know got confused about who was the emperor at the time. So it's the wrong time. They literally will say all three of those things, and it's about as credible as Jay's argument. Maybe slightly less. I don't know. They're both so ridiculous. It's hard to judge them in comparison. But they will literally say it's the wrong man, the wrong time, and the wrong place.
Suddenly, everything goes out of whack. He comes from a place called Mecca, and you haven't bothered to look at Mecca. There is no Mecca. It's not just on the maps. The maps were Ptolemy from the 2nd century. The reason he didn't write it there because he never went to Arabia. The maps all come from the 16th and 17th era, but don't forget the maps. Just look all.
Yes, thank you. Ptolemy didn't know about Mecca because he never went there. Thank you, Jay. I don't know why I don't know why he said that. Nazareth's not on any map. Nazareth
Why
is
would
not
you
on any map.
include a place that you hadn't been accurately on a map if you're drawing the map yourself? Because again, this is like hand drawn, so you have to do it yourself. Yeah, that really doesn't sell his point very well.
No, it doesn't. And Nazareth is not on any map. It just isn't.
The references. Patricia Crone really shuts this down. You need to read her book. She says, look, we can't find any documentary reference for this place. It's in the middle of a desert. Where there's a desert, there's no water, no people, no people, no towns.
Stop that, Jay! Stop it! Stop
People
it.
lived there. People
Stop.
lived in the region, whether or not Mecca existed. People lived
Whether
in
or
the
not
region.
Mecca existed, people have been documented, tribes have been documented, kingdoms have been documented in the region. Quit saying this nonsense. It's making you look so foolish because only the empty quarter, and there's an area to the north that has another empty stretch, had no people in it. This had people in it. Not only that, but it had villages in it too. There are villages today in the Hijaz that have no water from any outside source.
Mm-hmm.
Jay Smith knows perfectly well that Mecca floods regularly. Why does Mecca flood regularly? Because it's actually built along a wadi that can get super flooded at times, but seasonally there's water rushing down certain areas because there are wadis taking water down from higher in the mountains to lower down. That water was part of what filled up the wells and allowed a very small group of people to live there year round. Not just in Mecca. Many other small, teeny tiny villages all over the Hijaz today do not have any source of water except for rainfall and wells. And they exist. They're there. In fact, Mecca was unordinary because they had no cultivation at all. And that wasn't because they lacked water. Here's the thing that most people don't realize. They had no cultivation because it was a sacred space where this was not allowed. Other places built along wadis like this, they have today. You look at these tiny villages in the Hijaz without any water from any other source. They have trees. They have gardens. Why do they have them? Because they build little canals and waterways to water the trees. This was not done in Mecca. And no, it's not that they had particularly poor engineers. Mecca was a sacred space. You weren't allowed to cut down
this
trees
is just
to
a joke.
plant
This was just
Yeah.
a joke.
Here's the thing. Some people are actually arguing that, the Roman engineers came later. They had better engineers later. No. Taif had plenty of, they took water off the mountains going the other way they didn't have like a natural spring or anything in Taif. Taif existed. Why? Because they had water coming off the mountains that they built channels for. After Muhammad, after Islam, and when suddenly the rules of pagan haram no longer applied, people were massively uncomfortable and really unhappy when they started building the first, they're not sophisticated aqueducts, but like water channels, and planting gardens there upset a lot of people because it was against the pagan traditions. But previously they hadn't put anything there because it was pagan. And in the Islamic sources, in the Quran, it is described as a valley without any cultivated plants. And thus you must rely on Allah to get you the income to be able to have things from afar to feed yourself. That's what the Quran says. Pretending it says otherwise is a massive problem when it's right there in black and white. And you're just ignoring that part. You're ignoring the explicit part, and you're claiming that other random references to the fact that plants exist means that they were grown in Mecca, whenever explicitly says that nothing was grown there.
All right, we got to move on. 5 gifted memberships from Frog 1, Dog 2.
O son of Adam, spend. I will spend on you. Give, then I will give you. It's difficult because you know what? These are my last few. As it is, the price is going up, the rand is going down, this is happening. Excuses. Those are excuses. You give and watch what Allah does.
No excuses from Frog 1, Dog 2. Thank you very much for those gifted memberships. I will ask Mary to try to keep her comments as brief as possible because we really do need to wrap up, and we got almost 3 minutes to go.
There is no Mecca there. Now, what she said, and what was very interesting is, look at all the other areas that are around Mecca. So you start from Aden, you go to Najran, to Sana, to Najran, to Taif, you go up to Yathrib, to Khaybar, to Tabuk, all up to Gaza. Look at all those. Those are all just small little hamlets up on the Western Plateau. Every one of them has references. There is reference after reference that goes all the way back to the 3rd century BC. Why can we find reference to Mecca?
Wrong. There's no reference to Taif, even though it absolutely existed. There's no written reference to Taif. And in fact, originally, the original route of the plateau trade route did not go through Taif. It went all the way out into the empty quarter and then jumped up to straight to Khaybar. I think it might have even, I'm not sure whether or not it went through Medina before. It may have gone through Medina. And then at Khaybar, it splits up again. So that's just not true.
All right. Just not true.
So look at the documentary evidence. And then you can see why we're asking this question. Everything you're going to talk about, because he's in the wrong place doing the wrong things, and every one of the people that you're going to say are Muhammad are way up in the north. Why are they up in the north? Because there's
no, they aren't.
Even if they are way up in the north, that doesn't mean they're theoretically, if Islam was founded in Petra, as Jay once claimed, or Jerusalem, as Jay once claimed, or Persia, as Jay once claimed, or Syria, as Jay claims now, that wouldn't mean that Muhammad didn't exist. It would just mean that they called some other city that has a different name today Mecca at the time. That's all it would mean.
Yep.
It's not like some grand proof of anything.
Yep.
And even then, just from an outsider point of view coming in, just as a critical eye, he's making a lot of assertions without actual any evidence backing him up. He's saying, this is the person you're going to go to, and this is the person you're going to go to, and this. No, you're assuming that you know where I'm going. And you have yet to give me any of these actual evidence here in this debate at all. No references outside of yourself. That's not the sign of a strong case.
And as Houston points out, there was technology available to move water from a place where that's not literally on a river or the sea. It existed. And again, our claim is that it's a tiny village, which possibly didn't even exist at all at the time of Ptolemy, right? That's not essential that it existed in the 2nd century. It may have existed as a tiny pseudo settlement, or it may not have existed at all yet. It's not relevant. If it was founded in the 4th century, it couldn't be on Ptolemy's map no matter what.
Water there. Where there's water, there's food. Where there's food, there's civilization. That's why all these people are there. But look at the name that they give this guy. They call him Saracen. They call the people that are following him. He's a Saracen. He's a Hagarin. He's a Magrayite. He is a Muhajirun. You notice no one is calling him.
Oh my goodness. 3 of those words are all the same word. 3 of those words are immigrant. They do not call him a Hagarine. That is a term that Patricia Crona invented. They call him, and they call them immigrants because they are not local. They're not from there. They moved. Sorry. I mean, like, seriously. They called them immigrants because that was the name for those who move in jihad. And other than that, they call them Saracens because that's the name for all Arabs at that time. Being goofy.
People call Muslims, when at this time they should be replete of references to Muslim, especially now that they're controlled and they're dominated by these Arabs. But these Arabs are Nabatean Aramaic from what is primarily Jordan, and that's why they come from the line of Ishmael.
What did they call themselves?
From Hagar.
What do you mean they come from the line of Ishmael? That's just, or Hagar. That's just nonsense. That's just the Islamic narrative. Why are you accepting that part of the Islamic narrative?
Yeah, I know, right?
Of all things, why would you accept that part?
Of all the parts, you're going to accept that, right? So, I mean, like, dude, the reason they were not called Muslim is that it was just a word in the Quran that was one of many words used to describe those who follow Allah. Among them was also the mu'min. Mu'min, believers, is a much stronger term than Muslims. Muslims are just those who are obedient, where a believer is a better term. They call themselves believers. Everyone else who interfaced with them would not call them that. Eventually, they were able to get people to use the word Muslim just from acculturation, but they also disagreed with that. They don't think that they're submitting to God. They're heretics. So, illegal immigrants. Ha!
Yeah, illegal immigrants are anchor babies. Very funny. Obviously, those are modern concerns that there were no national borders at the time. But
I mean, there actually were. They would not have been allowed in. Entire groups were not allowed to migrate into the Roman Empire just because they felt like it. That was just not
okay. They weren't as well defined. Let's put it that way. All right, continue.
They're also known as the Muhajirun, people who are either on Exodus or from Hagar. In every column, they call them Ishmaelites. There's no
he admits it.
Them being called.
What do you mean they call themselves Ishmaelites? Why are you accepting that part of the narrative? That's actually pretty late. As near as I can tell, Muhammad didn't originally claim that he was from Ishmael, right? He just said he was from Abraham. Later on, they decided, you're going to claim Isaac, so we'll claim Ishmael.
Oh, he didn't even claim he was from Abraham until after he met the Jews. So
yeah,
all that's new nonsense.
So what do you mean that's what they call themselves? I mean, that's much later than them calling themselves believers.
You notice how he's trying to switch out immigrants, Hagarines. No, it can mean one or the other. It will not mean both. It won't mean both. Sorry. That's ridiculous.
called Muslims until well into the 8th century. That's why we're saying it's the fact that every one of these references, these 30 plus references, put the man.
Again, he says no one calls them Muslims until way into the 8th century. He's discounted all Islamic sources. I don't know whether there are Islamic sources that use the term Muslim or not. But he has also discarded the one Christian source that calls them Muslims from the 7th century. Why? I know from elsewhere, because he says they definitely weren't called Muslims at the time, so it must be a later forgery.
Yeah, and here's the thing: they were called Muslims very, very late in the 7th century. They began being called Muslims by outsiders,
Mm-hmm.
and it became.
Why
more
is Jay
common
giving
over time.
any? This is a good point. Why is Jay giving any credibility to Muslim claims like being Ishmaelites while claiming the Muslims have no foundation to stand on? I have no idea. It's just weird, right? It's weird how many of his arguments actually aid Muslims without him realizing it.
Too far in the north, put all of these people too far in the north, and they're called them Saracens. Saracens means plunderers. They are plunderers. That's what the word originally meant.
Dude,
plunderers from the sin, from the
oh my gosh,
Saracen
John
doesn't
of
mean
Damascus calls himself a Saracen in terms of his ethnicity. It was an ethnic distinction. It was not about a job description. It was applied to all Arabs. John of Damascus was not a plunderer. Just stop. This is embarrassing.
Yeah, there is some debate about what the word origin is, but the time that Muhammad or his followers or his mythical followers, whatever you want to call them, it was an ethnic term.
They dominated both Sinai, they dominated also Jordan, they dominated also Syria, and they dominated Iraq, but they were never down in Mecca. Bingo! Here we come back to Mecca again.
That's just false. Why are you lying? You are just lying at this point. They controlled Medina. They controlled the road. The sources say that Muhammad was king in Medina. Why? Why are you making this up? Why are you claiming
And
this?
Medina certainly existed, right? There's zero question that Medina existed. So I don't know.
It's absurd.
I'm trying to defend. In every case, I'm going to keep on reminding you, put him in Mecca in the 7th century. I want him down there. You keep on.
Jay is now obsessed with Mecca because he thinks it's his strongest argument. No other reason. It's the least important of the 3 arguments, but he thinks it's the strongest, and arguably it is, right? Arguably it is the strongest because it at least has a grain of credibility.
Yeah.
But that's why he wants to make everything about Mecca, because he thinks it's the strongest argument. It's the least important for sure.
Finding and putting a people way up here, and you say it's not important. It's absolutely important. That's why we can follow Jesus Christ, because he's the right man at the right place, doing the right thing at the right time. You cannot say the same for Muhammad. The wrong man at the wrong place, doing the wrong thing at the wrong time.
You still have 19.
All right. So that was the end there. Jay didn't use his last 20 seconds, so we had a little bit more time than I thought we did, but very good. Any last thoughts on what we just, well, just the last sentences there? I'll get your last thoughts on the debate after I take the super chats. So just thoughts on what we just saw.
I guess my thoughts would be give her references.
Yeah, give us some references.
But to say,
that's actually very good. That's a very
I have
good.
over 30 references of this. It's all proven. I have over 30 of them. Name some of them.
Yeah.
Let me see these references, because now you're making a claim that there's actual evidence that's supporting your position. Show me.
The grave of Muhammad is in Medina. I don't know why you're asking, Cargo Crew.
So Cargo Crew, we actually answered this question before you. There is a known grave of Muhammad. We can debate whether it's legitimately his grave or not, but there is a known grave of Muhammad. The mere fact that there is a known grave, and you're asking where are the graves, plural for some reason, of Muhammad, suggests to me that you're not really interested in the evidence. You're saying there should be a grave. Well, there is a claimed grave.
Yeah, there is a claimed grave, period. And whether or not he's in it, whatever, but they do claim a grave there. And that's where it's always
now
been.
you can say, now, if you tell me he's not in that grave, then I'd say, great. offered a piece of evidence that's irrelevant because they could have just put anyone in that grave and claimed it was Muhammad's. So why are you asking for it in the first place?
Yeah. And here's the thing. The fight for control over Mecca, the people out of Medina who are said to be out of Medina and out of Mecca and out of those two places. For heaven's sake, they controlled Yemen by that time. What do you mean they're not in Mecca? They're in Yemen. What did they do? Fly? Did they take an airplane? Are you just like the idea that they weren't there? They weren't in this. They were only north. No, they were in Yemen. They had conquered Yemen before they conquered the north. They conquered Yemen first. What do you mean they weren't there? Why did they conquer Yemen first? That's also a question. They're up there in Damascus.
Yeah, well, what Jay means is that the sources written in northern places about the invading armies of Muhammad talk about places in the north.
Wow, the northern sources about the current invasion are in the north. How much evidence is that? How much evidence is that for anything? Yes, they're going to talk about the people who are invading when they invade.
Their place. I know.
Their place?
Shocking,
They don't know what happened in Yemen. They had no idea.
Shocking. All right, let me run through these real quick. But so I'm a Muslim. Manuscripts of Holy Quran is carbon dated to Prophet Muhammad's times. It's all proof of preservation. It depends on the contents of that manuscript, now, doesn't it? Tune in tomorrow when we're talking about the Sana manuscript.
And note that I have said, my last presentation on the copies of the Quran, I have pointed out that they are not identical to the Quran you have today. They all have variants, and they have meaningful variants for Muslims, for Islamic practice. To be able to be a Muslim, you cannot be certain of what your book says about certain things. That's a problem for you. That disqualifies your book from what it needs to be for you. Now, does it disqualify as a historical? It's Quran and not some other book? No.
Okay.
But it disqualifies it from being for you.
Mary, I really need to wrap up. So
sorry.
One sentence. Eric, you wanted to say something.
Carbon dating, that fine has multiple issues, as well as it's a window that it could have happened. And in fact, that window goes before the Quran would have ever been written. So we know that it's not carbon dating the actual when the Quran was written, just when the animal died. That's all.
We'll be talking about the dating tomorrow. Previous stream on the contents. Both are relevant to your claim. Super chat from AT Ministries.
Wasting your time on social media is one of the best deeds a Muslim can do. There's a huge need for it. You know this and I know this. So that makes the reward even greater. So give generously and Allah Azza wa Jal will give you even more.
Thank you very much for the donation. 18 Ministries. It says, Mary, have you been writing recently? We miss you.
Yes, but I've completely
Mary's done more
track.
content recently than over time. If you mean like the last 5 days or something.
No, he means he means like and all kinds of other things. And yes, I've been writing enormous amounts, but I lost track so badly that I can't even say how many words I've written
books
because
you're
I've written
working
so many documents and things since then. So I completely lost track.
Excellent.
So that's why I haven't been updated.
So Cargo Crew earlier said every name except Kutham. I meant to bring this up at the time. So you're going to throw out, I don't know, 10,000 hadith that say Muhammad. And you're going to go with the one hadith that says Kutham, and you're going to act like that's a perfectly credible way of doing things. We have a perfectly valid explanation for why that hadith exists. Probably it was created post hoc after the fact as an explanation for why Muhammad didn't have a family name. Oh, you see, he did, but then it got changed by ordinance of God before he was born. Why was it? Real reason he didn't have a family name? Because he was a suspected bastard. That is why.
Yep.
Timothy's used highlight to say is a gray tab eagle allergic to fleas. Mine is, and was wondering if it's common in that breed. Our cats are strictly indoor, so they have never had fleas. So I wouldn't know if she's allergic or not. Jack Ray with a gifted membership.
Every single person that donates, inshallah, you're going to get a reward. You know what? Forget donate. Invest. You invest in your hereafter. Forgive me for pranking you guys, but I had to. Yeah, I'm the king of clickbait. Goodbye.
King of Clickbait says goodbye, and we're about to say goodbye as well. Thank you for that gifted membership, Jack Ray. That's all the comments I had stored. Eric, your final thoughts in 2 minutes. You got 2 minutes.
Final thoughts. No matter who it is giving you some sort of spiel, get the sources. Ask them if they claim that they have so many sources. Ask them for those sources, not because you want to prove them wrong, but just even to prove them right. To be able to use this argument, what Jay gave us here was not usable in the field because he didn't give us sources to be able to work with. I can't point to those and say, see here, this is where Muhammad said XYZ. And again, him appealing to different authorities as an appealed authority doesn't work if I don't respect those authorities, or the Muslims don't respect those authorities. If you want to use the hadith to prove that, yes, Muhammad sinned, yes, Muhammad did all these things, and you're talking to a Quran only Muslim, they're just going to say, so what? It doesn't matter. You would need to appeal to the sources that they think are credible in order to have a conversation with them on that and disprove things. So get the sources. And if you need to, call people out for when they're not giving the sources. That is completely legitimate.
All right. Now we're going to ask for the impossible. Mary's final thoughts in 2 minutes.
I think I've expressed everything. This is just a very frustrating thing for me. And the approach is not conducive to anything. It's not helpful.
Mm-hmm. A good strategy. Don't say anything. That way you won't accidentally say too much.
Exactly.
Gifted membership just came in from Frog1, Dog2.
Who ate the apple? You ate the apple. The whole apple. Yes, the whole apple. You ate it. But a small seed, you left it. You put it back into the earth. What happened? Allah, through His power, caused that to grow and to give you how many apples? Thousands.
Thousands of apples. Good way to end the stream there. Donate now, get thousands of apples later. Thank you for your support, Frog1, Dog2. As I just said, we'll be back tomorrow at noon. So 1 hour earlier than usual, half hour later than we started today, with Mary to discuss the dating of the Sana manuscript. On Thursday, I will likely have a fairly brief stream with Joey, a first-time guest on the channel, on how to have conversations with Muslims. Eric is laughing because it probably won't be brief in reality, regardless of what's planned. But
I know
Thursday
Joey.
night,
It's going to be good.
Yep. Thursday night, Mary and I will be on Apologetics Roadshow, David Wood's channel, to discuss early Islamic coins and why Jay's argument about them doesn't work. On Friday evening, Jai and Daughter of Christ will be on David Wood's channel to discuss Jay's claim about the name Muhammad. So lots of material on this subject coming up. Big audience over there. I would appreciate it if you go and support us on David's channel as well. Jay is apparently doing a video with Mel. Mel said it would be a live stream. I didn't think it would be. It appears it is not, but they are doing a video responding to our pushback on the name Muhammad and Muhammad in the Bible. So I'm looking forward to seeing if Jay took any of my feedback into account, because again, I am in private communication with him. He asked me for a list of arguments. I spent quite a lot of my time giving an extensive list of the errors in Mel's claims about Muhammad in the Bible. And we will see. We will see if any of that is taken into account or not. I have a scripted video on Jay's claims about Muhammad in the Bible. I hope they revise them. I hope they back away from it, but the teaching was put out. More than 1 million people have watched those videos. They need to be corrected on the public record, even if Jay backs down from those claims and stops repeating them, which again, I hope he does. I hope he takes the feedback into account and stops making the claims. We will see. We will see. I'm not saying he won't. I hope he will. But I don't know, right? I don't know. This is the first set of feedback I sent him. If he takes that into account, I'll send him more feedback. If he ignores it, I'm probably not going to waste any more of my time sending my arguments to him, because it takes me longer to write them up than it would for him just to watch the videos, which he doesn't want to do because he doesn't have time. So
weird for a researcher wanting feedback with a white paper. That's not how things work.
Yeah, he wants feedback, but he doesn't want to take the time to actually watch the feedback he is given. Got it. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Lots of stuff coming up, lots going on. We will be talking more about this issue. Hopefully I'll have some time to stream on some other issues, because I really don't want to make this my only focus. But right now it's super important because a lot of people are thinking about it. A lot of people are talking about it. We need to counter these arguments while we have people's attention. Thank you for watching today. We will be back tomorrow, like I said. Until then, God bless everyone. Let's close out with Pastor Jake.
Pray this ceaselessly. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me.